The Jacobson family seemed to have it all: wealth, success, and a beautiful home in Wellington, Florida. They appeared to be the ideal loving family. However, appearances can be misleading. Behind the facade of their perfect life lay a much darker reality. What was meant to be a joyful birthday celebration for their two young boys turned into a devastating event, leading to a tragedy so profound that the entire nation would remember their names. To fully grasp this story, we need to go back to 1989 when Neil Jacobson met Frankie at a gym in Bayside, Queens, New York, where they both lived and worked. They are ambitious and successful in their careers. Frankie was making her mark at Lehman Brothers, a leading firm in finance, while Neil had established his own boutique firm on Long Island. They were young, driven, and aspiring to achieve the American dream. Those who knew them praised their relationship as one filled with deep admiration and affection. Frankie was entirely devoted to Neil. In turn, he was seen as a charismatic and kind man with immense potential. Within his family and social circles, he was often regarded as a golden boy, intelligent, charming, and seemingly unstoppable. Together, Neil and Frankie appeared to be the perfect couple. They soon took the next step in their relationship by getting married and moving into Neil's home in New Jersey. Transitioning into married life was easy for them. Together, they created a comfortable, rewarding life filled with shared interests and adventures. They did everything, enjoying activities like biking, scuba diving, and weekend trips to the countryside, which helped strengthen their bond. To an outside observer, their life seemed perfect. However, amidst their seemingly ideal marriage, they felt something was missing: children. They desperately wanted to start a family, but the path to parenthood was challenging. For years, they endured the painful reality of infertility, going through multiple fertility treatments that brought both hope and disappointment. Despite the emotional toll, they remained determined. Finally, in 2003, after many struggles, their dreams came true when they welcomed twin boys, Joshua and Eric. With their lives already comfortable, Frankie and Neil experienced happiness beyond what they had ever imagined. Their family felt complete, and they thrived both personally and professionally. Neil's parents, Harold and Goldie Jacobson, moved from New Jersey to Florida in 2000. Although they loved their new home, they missed being close to their son and his family. They often expressed their frustration about the distance and wished for more time with their grandchildren. In 2005, Harold was diagnosed with cancer, and his health deteriorated rapidly, making it impossible for him to travel to New Jersey. This situation was a turning point for Neil. Being far from his father during such a critical time was too much to bear. He decided to move his family to Florida to be closer to his parents. Before the move, Neil had already started investing in real estate in Florida. He bought a pre-construction condo in Lantana and then a second one shortly after. Real estate quickly became an obsession for him, leading to the purchase of a third condo. Despite recognizing that he was stretching himself financially, he was drawn in by the booming market. Frankie, however, was concerned about his investments and questioned their practicality. Nonetheless, Neil was resolute in his decision and was not willing to change his plans. With his properties piling up in Florida, Neil began pushing Frankie to relocate. She was resistant, hesitant to leave behind the life they had built in New Jersey. She loved their home, their community, and the stability they had created. But as time passed, the financial strain of maintaining their New Jersey home became overwhelming. Eventually, Frankie reluctantly agreed to the move. The Jacobsons officially settled in Florida, eager to start a new chapter close to family. However, things did not go as planned. Neil had hoped to sell their New Jersey home before the move, but the market wasn't in his favor. Just 2 months after they arrived in Florida, tragedy struck. Harold Jacobson passed away. The loss of his father devastated Neil in ways he hadn't expected. He had uprooted his entire life to be closer to Harold, only to lose him so soon after arriving. The grief weighed heavily on him, and his mother, Goldie, later revealed that Neil had struggled with his mental health from a young age. She recalled that as a teenager, he had been diagnosed with obsessive-compulsive disorder, an issue that had plagued him for years. Doctors had noted that Neil had an overwhelming desire to be the perfect child, a pressure that followed him into adulthood. As the years passed, his struggles with anxiety only grew, and soon, things took an even darker turn. The Great Recession hit Florida hard, and Neil, who worked as a mortgage broker. The real estate market collapsed, and the once thriving business that had allowed him to invest so freely was now crumbling beneath him. The financial security he had worked so hard to build was slipping away. As the weight of his losses grew heavier, so did the cracks in his once stable world. The Florida condos he had invested in before relocating were quickly turning into a financial nightmare. Burdened with subprime mortgages, their payments increased month after month, stretching his resources thin. At first, Neil had convinced himself that things would turn around. He had always been a problem solver, always finding ways to make things work. But this time, no amount of determination could keep the walls from closing in. With little to no work coming in, and 4 separate mortgages draining their finances. At first, Neil and Frankie tried to hold on, dipping into their savings to stay afloat. But as time passed, their financial situation only worsened. Bills piled up, debt collectors began calling, and the stress of trying to keep everything together was pushing Neil to his limits. Desperate for a solution, he started making risky financial decisions, one bad choice after another, each one digging them deeper into a hole. He chased after risky investments, sought out loans, all in a futile attempt to stop the inevitable collapse. Eventually, the weight of it all became too much to bear. The financial juggling act had run its course. Frankie was exhausted and drained, made the painful decision to stop paying the mortgages on their 3 Florida condos. It was a move that felt like surrender, but they had no choice. There was simply no more money left to give. By the year 2008, the pressure of Neil's business failures had begun to take a serious toll on his health. At first, it started with minor complaints, aches and pains that he couldn't quite explain, but as time went on, his symptoms worsened. He became sluggish, struggling to muster the energy for even the most basic tasks. His body felt heavy, and his mind clouded. He experienced random bouts of dizziness that left him feeling unstable, and he found himself unable to focus the way he used to. Concerned, he visited the family doctor, who ordered a blood test. In October, the results were troubling. Neil had elevated hormone levels, but there was no immediate explanation for his decline. As the weeks passed, his condition only worsened. The once energetic and determined man was now lethargic, withdrawn, barely functioning. He was eventually diagnosed with depression and transient peripheral vertigo, a condition that further contributed to his constant dizziness. In an attempt to help him cope, his doctor prescribed Zoloft, a common antidepressant. Neil, desperate to feel better, took the medication as prescribed, hoping it would offer some relief. But instead of improving, his mental state deteriorated further. A few days after starting Zoloft, he was called back to the doctor's office, where they added a prescription for Xanax. It was meant to ease his anxiety, but his family and friends quickly noticed that something wasn't right. Instead of stabilizing his mood, the medication seemed to send him spiraling even further into darkness. His paranoia intensified, his emotions became more erratic, and Neil they had once known began to fade before their eyes. Neil's sister, Deborah, became deeply concerned about her brother's rapid decline. She confided in their mother, worried about what he was going through. According to Deborah, Neil had started experiencing terrifying hallucinations. He had grown increasingly paranoid, convinced that someone or something was out to get him. Frankie, his wife, was just as alarmed. She desperate for support as Neil's behavior became more and more disturbing. He had completely withdrawn from the world, he refused to go outside, stopped engaging with friends and family, and even neglected his own hygiene. There were days when he wouldn't even shower, lost in a haze of fear and depression. His paranoia took a terrifying turn when he became obsessed with the idea that the FBI was watching him. He was convinced that federal agents were surveilling him, gathering evidence to have him arrested. He would talk about it constantly, warning anyone who would listen that they were building a case against him. His delusions became more elaborate. He was certain that his phone was tapped, that his home was under surveillance, and that at any moment, the authorities would storm in, take him away. His mother saw the full extent of his paranoia. One of the last times she visited him, Neil pulled her aside, his voice shaking with fear. He told her he was in big trouble, insisting that the FBI was coming for him, that he had done something terrible, though he couldn't seem to explain exactly what. The fear in his eyes was real, raw, and overwhelming. As Neil's mind unraveled, January 23, 2010. The darkness he had been wrestling with for months finally took over, and what happened next would shock everyone who had ever known him. That morning, Neil stood before his wardrobe, fumbling with the top shelf, his hands shaking as he retrieved a loaded gun. His wife, Frankie, still groggy from sleep, watched in confusion, not yet realizing the horror that was unfolding before her. Neil, with the gun in hand, stepped out of the wardrobe, his face hardening into something almost unrecognizable. Frankie's heart skipped a beat as the realization hit her. In an instant, panic took over. She leapt toward him, struggling desperately to wrest the weapon from his grasp. They tumbled to the floor, the fight becoming a chaotic blur of screams, desperation, and tears. In the midst of the struggle, Neil, in a violent frenzy, struck Frankie, knocking out her front tooth and slicing her finger. Despite the brutality of it all, Frankie didn't give up. She fought with all her strength, but Neil was too much, overpowering her in his disturbed state. With cold detachment, he stood, reloaded the gun, and turned the weapon on her. 2 shots rang out one after another, each striking her in the face, silencing her forever. But Neil's twisted path didn't end there, covered in Frankie's blood. He reloaded the gun and made his way to his son Eric's room. Eric, who had been lying on his stomach in peaceful sleep, was the next victim in the nightmare that Neil had somehow constructed in his mind. 2 bullets tore through Eric's body, but against all odds, the boy survived the first 2 shots. However, Neil was undeterred, his mind fixated on finishing what he had started. He grabbed a pillow and pressed it over Eric's face, ensuring his son wouldn't survive. 2 more shots, and Eric was gone. The house was eerily still now as Neil moved toward the next room, where his youngest son Joshua was sleeping. Joshua, blissfully unaware of the carnage around him, lay curled in his sheets. Neil's actions were methodical, almost as if he were following a script. He covered his son's face with a pillow, silencing him with 2 shots to the face. In a matter of moments, the vibrant lives of his family had been extinguished, with the blood of his wife and children staining his hands. Neil walked to the bathroom and turned on the shower. He stood under the water, numb, as if washing away the sins he could no longer escape. When the shower ended, he dressed, swallowed a cocktail of Vicodin and Xanax, in a haze, left his home. As he drove, the pills began to take effect, making him groggy and disoriented. Less than a mile from his mother's house, Neil passed out behind the wheel, swerving off the road and coming to a stop in the grass. Neil had initially planned to kill his mother, next before taking his own life. But in his twisted state, something inside him held him back. He later told the police that when he was at home, standing in a living room, he thought about going to heaven to be with his father, but he couldn't leave his mother alone, so he planned to take her with him. Thankfully, he never made it to her house. When the police found him, Neil was disoriented, barely conscious, and gripping the gun beside him. As they approached, he muttered, "I killed my family," in a dazed and broken voice. The investigation raised many questions. Was Neil a victim of the side effects of his medications, or had he planned this horrific act all along? A suicide note found later suggested that Neil may have been preparing for this moment, leaving many to wonder whether he was driven by his medications or if he had, at some point, simply snapped. His attorney's defense centered around his mental state. They argued that he had been suffering from severe depression, anxiety, and paranoia, all of which had been worsened by the medications he was taking. They described Neil overwhelmed by financial ruin, haunted by the fear that the FBI was watching him, and convinced that there was no way out. His legal team insisted that he had not acted out of hatred or rage, but had instead been driven to an unimaginable breaking point due to the side effects of his prescription drugs. To support their argument, the defense brought in medical experts who testified about the dangers of Zoloft and Xanax, the 2 medications Neil had been prescribed before the murders. These drugs, they explained, could cause extreme mood swings, hallucinations, and suicidal tendencies, especially when taken together in high doses. Neil's behavior before the killings, his paranoia, delusions, and refusal to leave the house, was presented as clear evidence that he had lost his grip on reality. His lawyers pushed the narrative that Neil had been a loving father and husband, a man who had never shown any signs of violence before, making it hard to believe that he had killed his family intentionally. But the prosecution had a different story to tell. They painted Neil not as a victim of medication but as a desperate man who had methodically planned the murders. They argued that his financial troubles had reached a boiling point, and that instead of facing them, he had chosen to take his family's lives in an act of ultimate control. They pointed to the way he had executed the killings, retrieving his gun, reloading it multiple times, and ensuring that no one survived. To them, this was not the act of a man lost in a haze of confusion but one who had made a deliberate and calculated decision. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence against Neil was the suicide note found in his home. The note indicated that he had thought through his actions and accepted what he was about to do. It wasn't the frantic scribblings of someone in the middle of a psychotic episode, it was organized, reflective in the prosecution's view, proof of premeditation. If he had truly been unaware of his actions, why would he have left behind such a message? The prosecution also called witnesses to testify about Neil's behavior leading up to the murders. His sister, Deborah, had noticed a dramatic shift in his personality. He had become increasingly paranoid. His wife, Frankie, had confided in Deborah that Neil was no longer the man she had married. He had stopped showering, refused to leave the house, and seemed trapped in his own mind. While the defense used these accounts to argue that Neil was suffering from a mental breakdown, the prosecution used them to show that there had been warning signs, signs that should have led Neil to seek professional help instead of resorting to murder. Neil's mother, Goldie, also played a heartbreaking role in the trial. She had been one of the last people to see him before the tragedy. She recalled how Neil had told her, "Mom, I love you, no matter what happens." The courtroom fell silent. At the time, she hadn't thought much of it, but in hindsight, it was clear he had been preparing for what he was about to do. Goldie, who had always seen her son as a kind and loving man. She struggled to reconcile the Neil she knew with the one on trial for murder. As the trial progressed, the jury was left to decide whether Neil Jacobson had truly been in a state of antidepressants-induced psychosis or if he had coldly and deliberately murdered his wife and children. The prosecution emphasized that Neil had made a series of conscious choices, loading his gun, aiming at his loved ones, and pulling the trigger multiple times. They argued that no matter what struggles he was facing, nothing justified what he had done. The defense, on the other hand, urged the jury to consider his mental state, to see him as a broken man who had been consumed by fear, paranoia, and desperation. After days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict: guilty on all counts. The judge, while acknowledging the tragedy of the situation, made it clear that no level of financial distress or mental illness excused the murder of innocent children and a devoted wife. Neil Jacobson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His fate was sealed, and the courtroom was filled with an overwhelming sense of loss. Neil Jacobson reached a plea deal with the state. He changed his plea from not guilty to guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder. He stated that the reason was the family's mounting financial situation. Now, he will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Neil Jacobson answered to the judge in the Palm Beach County courtroom, admitting that he shot his wife, Frankie, and then shot their twin 7-year-old sons while they were asleep in their Wellington home back. During the family's turn to speak in court, Neil held his head down and never looked up. Even after the trial ended, many questions remained. Could this tragedy have been prevented if Neil had received different treatment? Were the medications to blame, or was he simply a man who refused to face his failures? No one could say for certain what had driven him to this point. However, what was undeniable was that a mother and 2 young boys had lost their lives in the most horrific way possible. Nothing could ever undo that. Emily Beatriz Azevedo Sena was born in Várzea Grande, a city in the Brazil state of Mato Grosso. She lived with her mother and her stepfather, who became a father figure to her when she was 6. He worked as a radiology technician at Santa Helena Hospital in the nearby city of Cuiabá. The family lived a modest yet close-knit life. Emily was known for her kind nature, calm demeanor. Classmates and neighbors often described her as a gentle person who avoided conflict. At 16, Emily found out she was pregnant, a surprising discovery that she ultimately accepted. The father was a young partner of similar age. Instead of pulling away, he supported her throughout the situation. They started living together and he actively participated in getting ready for the baby's arrival. He went with Emily to doctor visits, assisted with planning, took part in conversations about names and baby items. Despite their youth, her partner demonstrated a strong sense of responsibility, dedication. Although their relationship encountered challenges because of their age, it was characterized as stable, supportive. For Emily, becoming pregnant was a major milestone in her life. She eagerly talked about her future daughter and shared her excitement with family, friends. Her mother and stepfather were very supportive, helping her choose furniture, buy clothes, prepare the nursery. Their home was filled with joy and anticipation. They celebrated the gender reveal twice, once with her partner's relatives and again with Emily's family. Friends remembered how glowing she looked when discussing her journey to motherhood. In another part of Mato Grosso, Natalie Helen Martins Pereira, a 25-year-old married to Christian Albino Cibalho de Arruda, 28, was raising their 3 children, a girl and 2 boys. Natalie worked in public safety, officially employed by the fire department while also taking nursing classes. To others, she seemed organized, responsible. However, beneath this surface, her life was more complicated. Several years ago, Natalie had a medical procedure that tied her fallopian tubes, which prevented her from becoming pregnant naturally. Despite this, she began claiming that she was expecting another child. To support her claims, Natalie created fake medical documents, including ultrasound images, and told others that she was having a baby girl. Christian believed her and shared the news on social media, posted the ultrasound images, even organized a gender reveal party. To make her story seem more convincing, Natalie often posted pictures of herself with what looked like a growing belly or loose clothing and explained her physical appearance as a sign of her impending delivery. In reality, this was all part of a carefully orchestrated and emotionally manipulative lie, a fake pregnancy that relied on fabricated evidence. Natalie not only staged a fake situation but also created an online identity. She joined various online groups for expecting mothers, where she pretended to be a helpful member who often offered items like baby clothes, diapers, and accessories to other moms-to-be. However, there was a catch: the items could only be picked up in person at her house, and the person collecting them had to come alone. This was a deliberate strategy where her online persona was used to make contacts and choose potential targets. No one in Natalie's close circle, neither Christian nor her family, realized that her cheerful demeanor was a meticulously crafted facade. She was intent on making her story a reality, regardless of the consequences. A few weeks before her disappearance, Emily started participating more often in online groups for expecting mothers. She shared her pregnancy thoughts, sought advice, and welcomed support. In one of these forums, she was approached by a user. Her messages were friendly. She offered to donate items for Emily's future daughter, such as clothes, baby blankets, and diapers. This seemed generous, and Emily was genuinely interested. Their conversation soon turned more personal. The user came across as warm and caring, emphasizing her desire to help. When Emily suggested bringing someone with her, like her partner or sister, Natalie became uneasy. She mentioned that her street had many nosy neighbors, and she wanted to avoid attracting any attention. Although her responses were unclear, they didn't raise any major red flags. Emily talked it over with her family and initially decided against going by herself. However, she changed her mind after Natalie offered to send a driver to pick her up, saying the car would be from a ride-sharing service like Uber. On March 12, 2024, around noon, a car came to pick up Emily. However, the driver, as later discovered by investigators, was not affiliated with any ride-sharing service. It was believed that he was either a relative or a friend of Natalie. The car was an ordinary civilian vehicle. Unaware of any potential danger, Emily got in after telling her mother that she would be back soon. She thought the outing would be just a quick trip to collect some donated items before returning home. After more than an hour without any updates from Emily, her mother, Anna Paula Meridian, started to feel anxious. Soon, messages began to come from Emily's phone. However, instead of soothing her worries, the texts only increased her anxiety. Emily claimed she was fine, enjoying a pastry, and would be back soon. Yet, something felt wrong. The language used was strange, overly formal, and didn't match Emily's usual way of writing. Anna quickly realized that someone else must have sent the messages. She attempted to call Emily, but there was no response, and her voice messages went unheard. As her concern grew, the family reached out to friends and acquaintances in hopes of finding Emily. Emily's stepfather was working at the hospital that day. He sensed something was wrong. He knew Emily had intended to pick up some items, and her failure to answer calls made him even more anxious. That evening, the family quickly decided to file a missing person report. At that time, no one knew where Emily was, who the driver was, or where she was headed. The only clue the family had was an online conversation with the woman, who mentioned living in the Jardim Florianopolis neighborhood in Cuiabá. This clue marked the beginning of a search by family members and friends. Worried and desperate, they knocked on doors in the neighborhood, checked the streets, and attempted to call the number mentioned in the messages, but no one answered. Communication had completely stopped. Emily's phone was still on, but she wasn't answering. Then, Natalie suddenly changed her online behavior. She stopped replying to chat group messages and withdrew her support for others. Later, it was revealed that shortly after Emily left home, Natalie deleted all her messages and her account. This disappearance from the online world only confirmed the family's deepest fears. This was not a chance occurrence. By the evening of March 12th, the search for Emily was in full swing. Her family had reached out to the local police, shared her photos on social media, and appealed to the public for assistance. The initial hours after her disappearance were filled with urgency and anxiety, but no one anticipated how drastically the situation would develop. The following morning, March 13, 2024, a woman arrived at the emergency room of Santa Helena Hospital in Cuiabá with a newborn. She was in a wheelchair and told the hospital staff that she had given birth at home the day before. She described the labor as quick and straightforward, so she hadn't felt the need for medical help at that time. Now, she said, she was just there for a post-delivery checkup. The woman introduced herself as Natalie. That morning, the hospital staff member on duty was Emily's stepfather, a radiology technician. Although he did not know Natalie personally, he immediately sensed that something was wrong when he saw her. The previous evening, Emily had gone missing, and one of the primary theories suggested it was linked to a conversation she had with an online stranger who was offering baby items. Emily had previously mentioned to both her mother and her stepfather that she met someone online. She even shared a photo of her from the messaging app. Emily's stepfather immediately recognized the woman in the photo as the same person Emily had been talking to before she disappeared. Natalie was holding a newborn baby that the doctors believed had just been born. However, something seemed unusual. Her behavior and physical state did not align with what one would expect from someone who had recently given birth. There were no visible signs of pain, post-labor symptoms, bleeding, or trauma. Medical staff also found that she was not producing milk when she tried to breastfeed. Even the way she stood and moved raised concerns. Even though she arrived in a wheelchair, she moved around confidently and chose to sit in a chair rather than needing to. A preliminary medical evaluation raised concerns. There were no signs that she had recently given birth. Her cervix was not dilated, and her uterus was of normal size, showing no changes or discharges that usually occur after delivery. This became crucial evidence that proved her story was false. The medical staff quickly informed hospital administrators and contacted local authorities about the situation. Emily's stepfather told investigators that Emily had gone missing the day before after planning to meet a woman. When he recognized the woman in front of him matched Emily's description and photo, his concerns grew. When officers arrived at the hospital, Natalie claimed that the newborn girl was her daughter, whom she had given birth to at home. She could not provide any documentation to support her claim, saying the birth was unexpected and there was no time to go to a medical facility. She answered questions calmly and showed no signs of distress. Investigators started looking into the origin of the newborn. They ordered emergency blood tests and DNA analysis. Medical professionals confirmed that the baby had been born within the last 24 hours, which matched the timeline of Emily's disappearance. This led to a troubling question: could this child be Emily's daughter? Investigators examined Natalie's phone and found deleted conversations, including exchanges with Emily. These messages showed that Emily had agreed to meet Natalie to receive baby items. This evidence indicated a clear pattern of deception. Natalie had created a false identity, gained trust, and arranged a meeting under false pretenses. At this point, the idea that Natalie had simply gone to the hospital for a checkup was no longer believable. Law enforcement began to suspect that Natalie may have brought a baby that she did not give birth to, but rather one that was taken from someone else. Their suspicions were confirmed when they analyzed ultrasound images that Natalie had shared on social media. Investigators discovered that these images did not belong to her. They were taken from another woman's profile, a woman living in a different state, who had no known connection to Natalie. As these discrepancies emerged, the police shifted their focus to finding Emily. The infant Natalie had brought to the hospital was placed in temporary protective custody, under the care of social services, until her biological identity could be verified. Shortly after, Natalie was taken to the police station for formal questioning. At first, she remained silent. When directly asked about the child's origin, she gave vague answers, claiming that everything had been explained and that nothing wrong had occurred. Although she appeared calm and showed no signs of panic, her reluctance to provide a clear explanation led investigators to suspect that she was stalling. Only after investigators showed her the medical exam results, which disproved her claim of giving birth, along with the recovered text messages linking her to Emily, did Natalie change her story. She then shared her initial account of events. She claimed to have met Emily in online parenting groups and said that Emily was struggling in her relationship. Emily had thought about not keeping the baby. Natalie asserted that she offered to take care of the child and that Emily had agreed. However, law enforcement had doubts about this explanation. Emily's family strongly denied any claims that she intended to give up her daughter. They insisted that Emily had been excited about her baby's arrival and never showed any doubts about keeping her. The whole family actively prepared for the new baby by buying clothes, setting up a nursery, and celebrating together. Emily's mother and stepfather emphasized that she viewed her future daughter as the most important part of her life, and the thought of giving the baby away was entirely unthinkable for her. This information was part of the official case file, and Natalie's statements were now being examined for inconsistencies. When faced with increasing evidence, Natalie eventually changed her story. In a second interview with investigators, she confessed that she had tricked Emily into coming to a house by pretending to offer baby items. Emily arrived alone, as they had agreed in their online communication. Emily then began to feel pain and sat down, complaining of cramps. At that moment, Natalie approached her from behind and forcefully restrained her. After Emily lost consciousness, Natalie bound her wrists and ankles with materials she had available. She then tried to deliver the baby by making an incision in Emily's abdomen with a sharp kitchen tool. Emily received no medical assistance and ultimately died due to severe blood loss. Natalie did not express any regret in her statement. She claimed that she wanted to take care of the baby and did not mean to cause any harm. However, the way she acted, using restraints and preparing certain materials, suggested that her actions were thought out beforehand. As Natalie continued to speak, her versions of events became more inconsistent with the facts. Investigators ultimately determined that the incident was pre-planned. After questioning Natalie, law enforcement started investigating all places associated with her. One property in the Jardim Florianopolis area received special attention. This private residence, owned by Natalie's brother, was said to be where she met Emily. During the property inspection, police noticed an area behind the house where the ground looked recently disturbed. The soil was uneven. They quickly cordoned off the area and called in forensic specialists. As the specialists carefully removed the top layer of soil, they discovered that a body had been buried. Emily's body was found in a shallow grave, covered loosely with dirt and debris. The way the body was positioned indicated it had been disposed of hurriedly. Her wrists and ankles showed signs of restraints, including ropes and bits of plastic cable. Investigators later determined that the bindings were made from old internet wiring. The grave itself was poorly dug, without the use of tools, and was barely big enough to hold the body. Emily's body displayed clear signs of trauma on her body. Her face had visible injuries, including bruises, swelling, and scratches. Forensic experts noted damage to her cheekbones and nose. There were also marks on her neck that suggested she had been choked, as well as bruises on her wrists indicating she had been forcefully held down. The autopsy revealed that these injuries occurred while she was alive, implying the use of significant force. It was determined that her death resulted from severe blood loss due to a deep wound in her abdomen. The precise T-shaped incision in her lower abdomen indicated that it was not an accident. Forensic experts indicated that the shape and depth of the cut suggested the perpetrator had a basic understanding of internal anatomy and made an effort to avoid injuring the baby. This degree of knowledge is rare for someone without medical training, although it could be obtained by watching detailed instructional videos. This was further confirmed by analyzing Natalie's internet search history. A key finding was that the burial site had been prepped in advance. Initially, Natalie claimed she dug the grave after the incident, but she later changed her story, admitting it was prepared the day before the meeting. A forensic team carefully examined the scene. Using chemical tests, they discovered important traces of biological material both inside the house and throughout the property. Blood stains were present in multiple rooms. Although some parts of the floor had been cleaned, residues were still left in the tile grout and seams. These findings were meticulously recorded and included in the criminal case. Given the amount of evidence, authorities officially reclassified the case as a premeditated crime with aggravating factors. Immediately after her arrest, Natalie stated that she acted alone and that her husband, relatives, anyone else were unaware of her plans. At that time, the house was occupied by her brother and his wife. Natalie stated that her brother and his wife were not home when the crime happened, but investigators could not confirm this. Their exact whereabouts during that time remained uncertain. A significant question was whether they could genuinely be unaware of a freshly dug pit on the property or that someone had come in to help clean the house. However, it was later established that Natalie had been to the house several times leading up to the incident, under the pretense of helping with chores or spending the weekend. This made her visits seem normal and unremarkable to those living there. Forensic experts noted that it would be very challenging for a single person to dig a pit, commit an act of violence, perform a makeshift procedure, move a body, clean the crime scene, hide evidence, and leave the area without drawing attention, all within a short period. This is especially true given the logistical difficulties involved. The body was wrapped in fabric and required various materials, while the cleaning process included removing items, white blood, and washing clothing. Each of these tasks demanded time, strength, and coordination. Did Natalie truly act alone? At the time of the investigation, there were increasing suspicions, but no solid evidence was found linking anyone else to the case. No family member had been officially identified as an accomplice. Cayo Police Chief Fernando Alvarez Albuquerque said authorities are continuing to investigate whether Natalie's husband, brother, and the driver had anything to do with the death and burial. After the body was officially identified and all forensic procedures were completed, Emily's family received permission for a burial. Because of the condition of the remains, the service was conducted quickly. The ceremony was brief and did not include a traditional farewell. It was held privately, attended only by immediate family members, Emily's mother, stepfather, the young father of the baby, and a few other relatives. The family was devastated by the loss. They were deeply affected emotionally and unable to speak publicly about their grief. Emily's mother, as reported by those close to her, was in a fragile emotional state and had withdrawn from social interactions, avoiding even her neighbors. Emily's partner, who never expected to become a father under such tragic circumstances. According to the family, he has remained dedicated. He frequently visits the baby. Despite his young age, he has shown a desire to be actively involved in raising his daughter. The newborn, who was rescued after the incident, has been placed temporarily in the care of her grandmother, Emily's mother, a decision made by child welfare authorities and the district attorney's office. Emily's stepfather is also considered one of the responsible guardians. During the first few weeks, medical professionals monitored the baby's condition closely. Fortunately, she stayed in stable health. After receiving medical clearance, the baby was taken home to the same place where her mother had lived. The reason for Natalie's actions remained a key topic of conversation. Even though she was already a mother of 3, she pretended to be pregnant for almost 9 months, creating an illusion of expecting another child. She went to great lengths to forge medical records and create a believable story online, portraying herself as an expectant parent on social media. However, her goal was not just to have another baby. She specifically sought out expecting mothers who were likely to have daughters. Her method of selecting targets, arranging the setting, and researching how to remove and take baby indicated that her actions were carefully planned. Natalie is still in custody, waiting for her trial. The charges against her are still active, and investigators believe the evidence supporting these charges is strong. Emily's case has gained significant attention and raised serious concerns, influencing how online interactions are perceived, particularly among vulnerable groups. The Jansen family appeared to be a loving and supportive unit, like many other families. However, one day, everything changed dramatically. An unexpected event occurred in their home. This incident triggered a chain of events that devastated the family and shocked those around them. Law enforcement, friends, neighbors all sought to understand how this seemingly perfect family could unravel what actually happened behind closed doors. In the dense forests of British Columbia, Randy Jansen led an ordinary life in a small town called Langley. Known for its brick storefronts and cozy coffee shops, Langley was viewed as a peaceful haven. Randy experienced years of hard work and unfulfilled dreams that often brought him unhappiness. From a young age, Randy had a strong bond with his father, who worked at a local lumber mill. His father taught him the skills of woodworking. After graduating high school, Randy followed in his father's footsteps by securing a job at the same mill. The job was tough, requiring long hours and significant physical effort, but Randy was used to hard work. In Langley, the lumber mill was seen as a vital part of the local economy and way of life. For more than 10 years, he committed himself to the challenging routine of processing wood and transporting logs. Although the work was repetitive and tiring, it provided him with stability. Each day might have seemed the same, but Randy found meaning in the rhythm of his work and his role in the community. The lumber mill represented stability in Randy's life, while music served as his escape, a way for him to express emotions he often found difficult to put into words. Since childhood, music had been important to him. Over time, playing guitar and singing shifted from being just a hobby to a crucial outlet for his feelings. Randy often performed at a local bar in Langley, where residents gathered to relax after their long workdays and enjoy live music. On stage, he transformed from his usually quiet self into an engaging and energetic performer, captivating his audience. The townspeople appreciated his heartfelt performances, which were filled with authenticity and passion. At a local bar one ordinary evening, Randy met Laurel, a woman who would profoundly impact his life. Laurel, 6 years older than Randy, worked as a bartender and often watched his performances from behind the bar. She was confident, charismatic, well loved by the patrons for her ability to create a welcoming atmosphere and her friendly demeanor. What began as casual chats about music and life quickly developed into a deeper bond. Their mutual love for music and shared aspirations brought them closer. Laurel played the piano and, although her life had taken a different path, she had always dreamed of pursuing a professional music career. This common dream, paired with genuine interest in each other, soon evolved into something much more significant. Life at the lumber mill went on as usual for Randy, but everything changed with Laurel's presence. Their relationship grew stronger as they started planning their future together. Although Langley felt familiar and comfortable, it began to seem too small for the aspirations they had. They dreamed of a life where music could be more than just a pastime. They wanted it to be the core of their future. Randy's days at the mill, his nights performing at the bar, and his evenings with Laurel filled him with a sense of purpose, love. He hoped for what lay ahead. Randy and Laurel frequently looked back on their wedding day in 1990. It was a modest ceremony with just their closest friends and family, creating a warm and intimate setting. The event featured live music, including a special song that Randy sang for Laurel, marking the start of their loving journey together. A few years later, their daughter Emily was born. She quickly became the center of their family. Randy often expressed how Emily was the best thing that ever happened to him. Anyone who knew them could see the deep love he had for her. Emily was only 8 years old when her life changed drastically. She started suffering from severe headaches that were so painful she could no longer participate in her music activities. From a young age, Emily had a natural talent for singing, which amazed her parents and earned her awards in competitions. She was living a lively life, taking vocal lessons and dreaming of becoming a singer. Her parents, encouraged by her success, did everything possible to support her dreams. Initially, Randy and Laurel struggled to understand their daughter's condition. They visited multiple doctors and underwent numerous medical tests, but none provided clear answers, leaving them confused. Emily had to leave school and start home-based learning because the bright lights and loud noises in classrooms worsened her severe headaches. Her room turned into a dim sanctuary where she spent most of her time. Randy and Laurel took turns caring for her, trying their best to alleviate her pain and offer comfort during her difficult times. After thorough medical evaluations, the doctors diagnosed Emily with migraines. This news deeply affected her entire family. The medications they prescribed provided only slight relief, easing her pain a little but never completely stopping the headaches. The music she previously cherished, which brought her so much happiness, was now unattainable. Once a vibrant and energetic young woman, Emily began to withdraw, spending most of her time in silence, darkness. Randy and Laurel were determined to find a solution for their daughter's condition. They explored numerous treatments, consulted many specialists, and looked into alternative therapies, but nothing provided the lasting relief they had been hoping for. The medical outlook was bleak. Migraines are often chronic, and many people suffer from them for life. Statistics revealed that around 53% of migraine sufferers cannot drive because of their symptoms, 30% find it difficult to finish their education, and 34% encounter issues in maintaining employment. Although these figures indicated that Emily's situation was relatively common, they offered little comfort to her parents, as they witnessed her once vibrant spirit fade. Randy went through a really tough time during these years. Music, which had once been his escape, now reminded him painfully that Emily could no longer share in the joy it brought her. Playing guitar in the evenings felt empty without her voice alongside him, and performing at the local bar, which used to be a source of joy for him, no longer felt fulfilling. He began to spend more time at home to support Emily as much as he could. However, as her condition worsened, both Randy and Laurel felt increasingly powerless. Their vibrant daughter, who was once full of life and determination, now isolated herself in her room, avoiding the world and its noise. Randy continued to work, but his thoughts were constantly with Emily. Each morning, he hoped to find a way to relieve her suffering. By the time Emily turned 18, her condition had worsened significantly. Her migraine episodes became more frequent and intense, sometimes lasting for several days. This constant pain made it difficult for her to study and maintain friendships. Despite these obstacles, Emily remained determined. She enrolled in the Fine Arts program at the University of British Columbia, aspiring to become an opera singer. For Emily, going to university was not just about academics. It was an opportunity to regain a sense of normalcy and pursue the life she had always dreamed of. Despite feeling physically exhausted and experiencing frequent pain, Emily committed herself to staying active. She took vocal lessons, learned music theory, studied art history and literature. She also participated in student events and concerts whenever possible. Her classmates admired her determination to engage in university life despite the challenges she faced. However, Beneath this outward involvement, Emily was battling significant struggles. She frequently had to miss classes and catch up on her studies alone. The strong medications prescribed for her migraines left her feeling tired, drowsy, and weak. Her treatment plan included triptans, anticonvulsants, and antidepressants to help manage her symptoms. But these medications also had serious side effects, such as depression, difficulty concentrating, and a decline in her overall health. Over time, Emily chose to limit her medication intake as much as possible to lessen its effects on her body and began exploring alternative ways to manage her condition. Emily focused on meditation and breathing exercises, used cold compresses on her head, and stayed away from bright lights, strong smells, and loud noises. Her room became a safe space where she could escape anything that increased her pain. During her worst migraine episodes, she would sometimes stay in complete darkness for entire days, while her parents took turns caring for her and doing their best to alleviate her discomfort. Despite these challenges, Emily worked hard to maintain a sense of normal life. She kept in touch with her friends, even though she couldn't see them as frequently as before. Sometimes, she had to cancel plans at the last moment due to sudden migraine attacks. However, her friends remained supportive, visiting her at home and spending time with her to ensure she didn't feel alone. Despite her challenges, Emily remained committed to the things she loved. Her desire to return to music and live a fulfilling life never faltered, even as the journey became increasingly difficult. On May 7, 2015, Randy shocked everyone in his life with a Facebook post. He revealed some unimaginable actions he had taken in the prior 10 days. He started the post by expressing his love for his daughter, Emily, whom he described as an exceptional daughter, talented, intelligent, and kind. Emily brought immense joy to their family, filling their home with laughter and always willing to assist others, even while facing her own struggles. Unfortunately, her illness had robbed her of so much, forcing her to give up dreams she had worked tirelessly to achieve. Emily had been experiencing migraines since elementary school. The persistent pain caused her to fall into deep depression, making it common for her to endure days without relief. Randy observed how his daughter watched her classmates enjoy normal lives while she spent her time in hospitals or isolated in her dark, quiet room. Despite her efforts to hope for a brighter future, nothing seemed to alleviate her suffering. Randy worked at a lumber mill, but when he wasn't working, he dedicated all his time to Emily. He often told his friends that she was his whole world and that he couldn't bear the thought of life without her. Watching her in pain and feeling powerless to help was pushing him toward despair. Friends noted how Randy shared his struggles with them, making it evident how deeply he was affected emotionally. In this Facebook post, he confessed to taking a gun and ending Emily's life, explaining that he did it to free her from her constant pain. He described his vision of her as an angel soaring above the clouds, her long hair flowing in the wind, finally at peace. But he didn't stop there. Randy also revealed that he had taken the life of his wife, Laurel, because he couldn't bear the thought of her enduring the heartbreak of losing their daughter. A few days later, he also ended the life of his sister, Shelley, claiming he wanted to spare her from the shame of his actions. In the post, Randy shared Emily's journey in her battle against illness, highlighting her incredible strength and resilience. Unfortunately, despite her efforts, the illness had taken its toll. Randy expressed his helplessness as he watched her suffer daily, knowing he couldn't change her situation. He often told friends that he would do anything to support Emily, and ultimately, he felt this was the only way to help her. At the end of his Facebook post, Randy mentioned that his family was now in a better place, free from suffering. He expressed sorrow for his actions, took full responsibility, and apologized to anyone he had hurt. The post closed with the haunting phrase, "Rest in peace, my little family." After Randy's post went live, his friends and acquaintances immediately alerted the police out of concern for Randy's family. They were shocked by the content and wanted to ensure everyone's safety. Law enforcement acted quickly after receiving several calls. Officers were sent to Randy's home to look into the matter. One of Randy's closest friends, Brian Jones, was filled with fear and confusion as he read the Facebook post. Initially, he hoped it was just a mistake or a cruel joke. However, when he saw the signature, Daddy-O, hugs and kisses, a nickname Randy had used since school. Brian understood that Randy had truly written those words. This left Brian in shock and disbelief. He had always seen Randy as a kind and caring person, deeply devoted to his family. The thought that his friend could commit such an act or even possess a firearm was unfathomable to him. Brian remembered how lovingly Randy spoke of his family, making it difficult for him to grasp how things had taken such a tragic turn. The seriousness of the situation struck him immediately, and he knew he needed to respond quickly. He left work early and made his way to Shelley's house, trying to call Randy as he went. Each unanswered call only increased his worry. When Brian got to Shelley's house, he saw a pile of undelivered newspapers on the porch. This was unusual because Shelley was always dependable and took her responsibilities seriously. Her old van was in the driveway, the curtains were tightly shut. The yard was eerily silent, with no signs of life. Brian knocked on the door multiple times, but no one answered. The atmosphere felt unsettling and unnaturally quiet. Shelley had become a private person after her parents died. She lived by herself, had no children, and hardly spoke to her neighbors. Her primary job was delivering newspapers, and she was recognized for her reliability, punctuality. When Brian noticed the newspapers piled up without being picked up, he became worried and called the police. The dispatcher told him that he wasn't the only one worried about the family. A patrol unit was already on its way to investigate. When the police arrived, they tried to reach Randy Jansen, who was inside his house. They saw him through a second-floor window with a gun. The officers used loudspeakers and attempted to call him, but Randy did not reply. Understanding the seriousness of the situation, the officers proceeded cautiously to prevent further escalation. The house was surrounded, and negotiators began their work, but Randy did not show any intention to surrender or communicate. After several hours, the situation became much more critical. Randy set the house on fire, and officers saw smoke rising from the upper floor. They tried to get inside, but the flames spread too quickly, blocking access through the windows. Officers noticed a body wrapped in a sheet on the first floor, but they couldn't reach it to confirm its identity. Within minutes, the fire took over the entire house. When firefighters arrived, the house was fully engulfed in flames, and they could not save it. Investigators discovered 3 bodies in the charred remains of the house on Lanberis Road in Rosedale. 19-year-old Emily was found in her bedroom, wrapped in a sheet. 50-year-old Laurel was located in the kitchen, covered with a blanket. Both women had suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the head. Randy's body was located in a second-floor bedroom. He had died by suicide using a firearm and setting the house ablaze. The positioning of his body and the presence of the weapon indicated that Randy was experiencing severe emotional distress when he made the choice to end his life. When police arrived at the home of Randy's sister in Langley, British Columbia, they found her body in the living room. She had been shot twice in the head and was covered with a blanket. No signs of a struggle, indicating that Randy had likely caught her by surprise. Over the past year, Emily's health had worsened significantly. Doctors had to give her morphine injections to manage her severe pain, and these were used as a last resort. Neighbors often witnessed her parents assisting her into their home after her hospital visits. Emily was so weak that she required help to walk, which was heartbreaking for everyone who knew the family. Randy Jansen, Emily's father, dedicated himself to caring for his family despite facing numerous challenges. A year prior to the tragic events, he sought assistance from their family doctor due to ongoing insomnia and intense stress. He shared his struggles with witnessing his daughter's pain. The doctor suggested using sedatives and advised Randy to focus on getting more rest, but Randy refused the medication, feeling it wouldn't truly solve his problems. Brian noted that Randy had never indicated any thoughts of self-harm or intentions to harm others. He described Randy as a calm and hardworking individual always willing to help. Randy consistently put his family first, so no one could have anticipated he was capable of such actions. Brian observed that Randy had reached his breaking point. He could no longer endure watching his daughter suffer, which led him to make a heartbreaking decision. Neighbors who had known Randy since he was a child found it hard to reconcile this event with the kind and gentle person they remembered. They noted that he had never shown any signs of aggression or cruelty. His actions appeared to stem from a sense of desperation and an inability to cope with the immense pain affecting his family. One neighbor recalled Randy saying that if his daughter were to die, he wouldn't have a reason to live. Emily's last tweet, posted just 4 days before the tragedy, stated, "I complain about the pain, but at least I'm here to feel it. I thank God for the chance to live." In Emily's Twitter account, she wrote, "For the first time in 2 years, I've gone 12 hours without pain. I'm so tired of hurting, but I need to keep going." Her resilience was clear, despite the immense challenges she faced. This message expressed her determination to cherish life despite the significant suffering she faced. Her social media posts often reflected her struggle to stay positive in the midst of her illness, highlighting her hope even when times were tough. Emily was remembered as a kind and caring young woman who made an effort to stay connected with her community. She loved music and sang at the local church whenever her health allowed. Many residents of Langley have fond memories of her performances, but as her health declined, she was able to attend church less often. Despite her challenges, she remained generous and thoughtful, baking with her mother, sharing treats with neighbors. On her good days, she also helped local children with their homework. Laurel, Emily's mother, did everything possible to support her daughter. In a Twitter post, she expressed her feelings, saying, "Emily is back in the hospital, praying to God they can help her. I feel so helpless." These words showed the deep pain and despair she experienced while watching her daughter suffer. Although Laurel was emotionally drained, she was determined not to give up and continuously sought ways to improve Emily's condition. Similarly, Shelley, Randy's sister, could not predict the tragedy that would occur. The family never imagined their lives would be changed in such a devastating manner. Over the past year, Randy often shared with friends the heavy burden and stress he felt due to Emily's illness. No one could have predicted that he would eventually become so emotionally fragile that he would consider harming his family. Randy struggled to manage the emotional strain. Despite their shared despair, the family attempted to support one another, but their situation continued to worsen, leading to an unforeseen and tragic outcome. With the details now revealed, it is obvious that feelings of despair, hidden challenges, and deep hopelessness led to an unexpected tragedy. The story of the Jansen family serves as a sobering reminder that even within seemingly stable homes, deep pain can linger just beneath the surface, occasionally breaking out in unpredictable ways. It was early morning in Chapel Hill when two friends returned to their apartment, assuming Faith Hedgepeth was just sleeping in. Her car was parked outside, and the door was unlocked, making everything seem normal. However, as they entered her room, they were shocked by what they found. A blanket covered something on the floor, there was blood on the walls. The room was eerily quiet, but it was evident that something horrific had occurred. There were no signs of forced entry. Security cameras had not captured anyone coming or going, only a few strange late-night texts and some unusual behavior. It was a crime scene that would be etched in their memories forever. What really happened in that apartment? Why did it take so long to catch her killer? Faith Hedgepeth was born on September 26, 1992, in Warren County, North Carolina. She was a proud member of the Haliwa-Saponi Native American tribe. After her parents divorced when she was an infant, her mother, Connie Hedgepeth, and her older sister, Rolanda, played significant roles in her upbringing. Despite the separation, Faith maintained a strong relationship with her father, Roland, who described her as the light that helped him overcome his struggles with addiction. Her birth gave him renewed purpose. Faith was gifted and ambitious, excelling in her studies. She received the prestigious Gates Millennium Scholarship and enrolled at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where she initially pursued a degree in biology. Although she faced challenges transitioning to university life, Faith remained determined. She switched her major, worked 2 jobs, and stayed focused on her goal to be the first in her family to graduate from college. She aspired to become either a pediatrician or a teacher, reflecting her compassionate nature. Faith shared an off-campus apartment in Chapel Hill with her friend and former freshman roommate, Karina Rosario. They lived in an apartment at Hawthorne at the View, a complex just minutes from campus. At one point, Karina's boyfriend, Eric Takeoe Jones, also stayed with them, but his presence created tension. Their relationship became toxic, characterized by conflict and breakups. Even after Karina changed the locks, Eric tried to break into the apartment twice. With Faith's support, Karina secured a protective order against him. Despite this, Eric moved into another unit in the same complex, remaining disturbingly close. On September 6, 2012, Faith attended her classes and then participated in an event hosted by Alpha Pi Omega, the oldest Native American sorority in the country, which she hoped to join. At 7:15 p.m., she left the event to work on a history paper about her tribe. At 8 p.m., she and Karina went to the campus library. From 8:30 to 9, she exchanged text messages with her father about her hopes of joining a sorority. Faith briefly left and returned at 11:30 p.m. They headed back to their apartment around midnight. Shortly after, they decided to go to The Thrill, a nightclub that allows entry for people under 21. Security footage showed them entering The Thrill at 12:40 a.m. They danced for over an hour before Karina began to feel unwell from drinking. They were recorded leaving at 2:06 a.m., with Faith driving them home. Upon returning to their apartment, Karina reportedly got sick and went to bed. Around 3 a.m., a neighbor heard loud noises from above, which sounded like heavy thuds, similar to furniture being knocked over or a heavy backpack falling. Faith's Facebook account showed activity at around 3:30 a.m. Just 10 minutes later, a text message from Faith's phone was sent to Brandon Edwards, one of Karina's ex-boyfriends. The message said, "Hey B, can you come over here, please? Rosario needs you more. You know, please let her know you care." Brandon replied the next afternoon at 4:16 a.m., asking who had messaged him, but by then, it was too late for a response. No reply ever came. While these messages were sent, Karina's phone also displayed outgoing calls to Brandon. At 3:52 a.m. Karina called Jordan McCrary, a UNC-CH soccer player she knew. At 4:25 a.m., Karina left the apartment and got into McCrary's car. She left the apartment door unlocked because she thought Faith was asleep. The following morning, around 10:30 a.m., Karina tried to contact Faith for a ride back but received no response. So, she reached out to their mutual friend Marisol Rangel, who came to pick her up. They arrived at the apartment just before 11 a.m. and assumed Faith had just slept in. Once inside, they called her name but got no reply. What they discovered in the bedroom was shocking. Faith's body was found partially undressed and covered with a blanket, positioned against the bed. Her shirt had been pulled up over her head, and there were signs of a brutal attack, with blood splattered on the walls, floor, and furniture. A used tampon was also found near her body. There were no signs of forced entry, and unfortunately, no security cameras recorded any activity in or out of the apartment that night. Karina was the one who called 911. When the authorities arrived at the apartment, Faith's death was confirmed at the scene. The crime was extremely brutal. Faith had been violently attacked. In the following days and months after the murder of 19-year-old Faith Hedgepeth, investigators uncovered unsettling details that painted a chilling picture but still raised many questions. One key finding was the presence of semen on Faith's body. DNA testing showed that it matched genetic material found in the bedroom. Although physical evidence suggested a possible abuse assault, the autopsy revealed no significant trauma to the genital area. Nevertheless, the Chapel Hill police leaned toward the belief that Faith had likely been abused, a conclusion supported by her family. An autopsy determined that Hedgepeth died from blunt force trauma to the head, likely caused by being struck by an empty rum bottle in the apartment. The Bacardi rum bottle found at the crime scene became crucial evidence. It contained tissue fragments and DNA, leading investigators to suspect it might have been the murder weapon. Next to Faith's body was a fast food bag from Time Out with a handwritten message, "I'm not stupid," and "jealous." Interestingly, despite the room being covered in blood, the note remained clean. This implies that the killer either wrote it after the attack, taking the time to clean themselves, or placed it there carefully to hide their identity. Handwriting expert Peggy Walla analyzed the note and determined that it was written in a disguised manner, suggesting that the author intentionally altered their handwriting to avoid recognition. Faith's murder deeply affected the Chapel Hill community, where homicides are rare, averaging less than one per year. Police Chief Chris Blue stated that the investigation quickly became one of the largest homicide cases in North Carolina's history. However, updates were scarce for many months, making the search for answers painfully slow for Faith's family. Her mother, Connie, shared that they were not allowed to see Faith's body. Additionally, all information about her death was kept confidential by a court order, which was unusual for the Chapel Hill police. In December 2012, the FBI became involved in the investigation and created a psychological profile of the suspect. They believed that Faith's killer likely knew her and might have lived nearby. It was suspected that the individual took a special interest in the case, possibly discussing it often or showing unusual behavior afterward. By July 2014, after obtaining a court order, the Chapel Hill police released 300 pages of case documents. The autopsy report, which came out in September, confirmed what the family had suspected: Faith died from multiple blows to the head. Her body had numerous cuts and bruises, and blood was found under her fingernails, indicating she had fought for her life. Court documents revealed that during the initial investigation, only 2 apartments were searched, Faith's and one other in the same complex. Some sources claimed that the wooded area behind the apartment was never investigated. Additionally, reports suggested that no search dogs were used, and officers did not canvass the neighborhood to question other residents, which was surprising given the high-profile nature of the case. Faith's phone revealed a possible clue in her case. On the night she died, she called her friend, Marisol Rangel, 3 times, with one of the calls resulting in a voicemail that accidentally recorded while the phone was in her pocket. The message is hard to decipher, but those close to Faith believe it captured a moment of tension. Some think they can hear arguing or a struggle, while others perceive it as background noise from a nightclub. Faith's father, Roland, claims he can detect his daughter's distress in the recording. Journalist Tom Gasparoli became very interested in the case, starting a blog and podcast to help uncover the truth. He collaborated with forensic audio expert Arlo West, who analyzed the voicemail thoroughly. West, experienced in audio enhancement and forensic analysis, found that the recording contained 4 voices, 2 male and 2 female, suggested that the conversation was heated. The voicemail was time-stamped at 1:23 a.m., just before Faith was seen leaving the club with her roommate. At 2:07 a.m. on September 7, 2012, surveillance cameras recorded Faith Hedgepath and her roommate leaving the Thrill nightclub. Everything appeared normal at that time. However, as the events of that night were examined, investigators and independent experts started to doubt the accuracy of the digital evidence. Arlo West raised concerns about the timestamp of a voicemail left from Faith's phone at 1:23 a.m., which seemed inconsistent with the nightclub footage. West noted that both Faith and her friend Marisol Rangel had phones that often had timestamp issues. He also pointed out that the local cell towers were unreliable, suggesting the message might have been recorded at a different time. Although the Chapel Hill police agreed to review the enhanced audio version, they maintained confidence in the original metadata, stating they did not believe the recording captured the moment of the murder. Much of the attention also focused on Karina's ex-boyfriend, Barrick, who was known to dislike Faith's influence on Karina and reportedly blamed her for their breakup. Police discovered concerning messages that Eric sent in the hours leading up to the murder. On September 6th, he texted a friend asking for forgiveness for something he was about to do. He also posted a similar message on Twitter. 3 days after Faith was killed, he shared a cryptic post on Facebook, stating, "Dear Lord, forgive me for all my sins and the ones I may commit today. Protect me from the girls who don't deserve me and those who wish me dead today." Investigators seized Eric's vehicle and searched his home, but they found no valuable evidence. His DNA did not match the sample found at the crime scene. Despite his cooperation, the police still considered him a person of interest, suspecting that he might know who was responsible, even if he was not directly involved. In 2015, police in Chapel Hill were hopeful that DNA evidence would eventually lead to an arrest in the case. Although they did not disclose the specific DNA details or its collection location, they maintained a positive outlook. At the same time, Faith's death caused significant fear and sorrow on campus. Memorial vigils were organized, including a traditional Native American ceremony to celebrate her life and spirit. Many students grieved for her, viewing her not just as a friend but as a cultural sister whose joy and compassion had positively impacted many. In 2016, a significant breakthrough renewed interest in the case. A laboratory in Virginia analyzed DNA from the crime scene and created a composite sketch of a potential suspect. This image was developed using forensic phenotyping, which can predict characteristics such as eye color, skin tone, face shape, and likely ancestry. The results suggested that the suspect might be of Native American descent with either European or Latino ancestry. While the sketch was not a definitive identification, it offered investigators and the public a possible face associated with the crime. Several people associated with Faith were investigated in connection with the ongoing case. One of them was a man who left the nightclub with Faith and Karina. He had arrived at the club earlier with 3 companions. All 4 were questioned and provided DNA samples, but none matched the DNA from the crime scene. Faith's father has been very vocal, insisting that Karina knows more than she has shared. Other people have also raised concerns about Karina's actions after Faith's body was found, regarding the 911 call she made. The call lasted over 8 minutes but did not mention Faith by name and omitted the fact that another friend was present in the apartment, giving the impression that Karina was alone. Police have indicated that Karina's account raises several questions, and there are inconsistencies in what she told investigators. One neighbor who saw Karina shortly after the body was discovered remarked that neither girl seemed upset. Complicating matters, Karina had reportedly left the nightclub early because she felt unwell but then left her apartment again just hours later, leaving the front door unlocked. A university soccer player picked her up, and his roommate noticed a small red mark on Karina's clothing that day. Police were alerted and searched for the shirt, but the test results were inconclusive. Authorities could not determine if the stain was blood, nor could they connect Karina directly to the crime. Despite the absence of physical evidence linking her to the murder, Karina has remained a key figure in the investigation. A private investigator, who is closely working with Faith's family, believes that the truth may involve Karina. He speculates that a possible argument between Faith and Karina at the Thrill nightclub, possibly related to a relationship, could have triggered Faith's death. Shortly after the murder, Karina moved out of North Carolina and has not publicly addressed the case. According to Faith's father, Roland, she also stopped returning his calls. Nevertheless, the police state that Karina has always been cooperative when they contacted her. For almost 10 years, the murder of Faith Hedgepeth remained clouded by theories, suspicions, and unanswered questions. Friends, former partners, and acquaintances were all investigated, and despite numerous leads, no arrests were made until 2021. On September 16, 2021, the Chapel Hill Police Department announced they had arrested 28-year-old Miguel Salguero Olivares from Durham, North Carolina. This breakthrough didn't come from tips or interviews, but from DNA collected after Miguel was arrested for a DUI in Wake County the previous month. His DNA profile was entered into the system and matched DNA found at the crime scene nearly 9 years earlier. Additionally, court documents revealed that a palm print found on the suspected murder weapon, a liquor bottle, also matched Miguel, strengthening the case against him. Prior to this discovery, the police had not identified him as a suspect, and his name had not appeared in earlier reports. Police Chief Chris Blue urged the community to be patient, saying, "This story will take time to completely unfold." In November 2024, the case took a significant turn. Prosecutors updated the original charges, adding 3 new ones: first-degree burglary, first-degree abuse, and first-degree abuse offense. These new charges intensified the seriousness of the allegations and clarified what may have happened in Faith's apartment that night. The arrest brought a mix of relief and renewed anguish. After years of uncertainty, a suspect had finally been named, someone now officially accused of causing Faith's death. However, as the legal proceedings began, it started a new phase in the quest for answers. Who was Miguel Salguero Olivares? How did he meet Faith? What exactly occurred in her final moments? For her family, this was a long-awaited step toward justice. Yet, for a community still grieving, it was just the beginning of discovering the complete truth. In 2020, the story of a young British woman named Angel Lynn shocked the entire United Kingdom. She had been stuck in a harmful relationship with a man involved in crime who faced serious legal issues. Whenever Angel tried to leave, the situation worsened. During her last attempt to escape, it turned into a kidnapping and a life-threatening incident. Thankfully, Angel survived, but her life now is very different. Angel Lynn was born in a suburb of Loughborough, Leicestershire in England Midlands. She was the youngest daughter in a family of 6 children. Her parents, Patrick, often called Paddy by friends, and Nikki, were ordinary people. Patrick operated a small retail business, while Nikki dedicated herself to managing the household and caring for their children. Although the Lynn family was not wealthy, their business provided a steady income to meet their basic needs. They lived in a spacious and comfortable home, working hard to ensure their children received a good education. Angel had a strong, loving bond with her family, especially with her mother, Nikki. She confided in her mom about everything, her future plans, dreams, and concerns. From a young age, Angel was very energetic. She excelled in school, participated in sports, and had many friends. Others viewed her as ambitious, principled, someone who stood up for what was right. She aspired to attend college to study law and work in the justice system. Angel was well known for her stunning looks and slender. With her bright blonde hair, deep blue eyes, she always drew attention and brightened up any event. Many people admired her, but she seldom went on dates due to her busy schedule. Angel cherished her independence and was committed to being self-sufficient. While still in high school, she worked part-time as a waitress at a local fast food restaurant. She diligently saved money for college and bought her own clothes, makeup, and personal items. After finishing high school, Angel successfully entered her dream college. She chose to become a crime scene investigator and enrolled in a program to help her reach that goal. She juggled her studies, work, and sports with impressive energy. Everything was going smoothly until she met a young man named Che Boskill, who took everything away from her. Che Boskill was the younger son of his mother. He grew up with his older half-brother. His mother single-handedly raised the boys, as neither of their father was involved in their lives. She worked multiple jobs from early morning to late at night to support them, which meant that money was always tight. Because she was rarely home, she spent little time with the boys, leaving them to take care of themselves in less than ideal living conditions. Che exhibited aggressive behavior from a young age, causing concern among those around him. He frequently had outbursts of anger, got into fights, and faced continuous trouble. As a teenager, he encountered legal issues and was arrested multiple times. Despite this, his mother always intervened to defend him, viewing her younger son as nearly perfect, despite his actions. His older brother also faced legal troubles, but Che ultimately became a more serious offender while still in school. Nevertheless, their mother did not see any issue with their behavior and did not view them as a bad person. At only 15 years old, Che got involved in crime. He began by stealing cars and taking them apart for parts. Soon after, he joined a local gang where he quickly built a reputation, found his role. It's important to mention that Che was following his brother's path. However, his brother was less aggressive and better at managing his anger. Che loved motorcycles and cars, but instead of just driving, he sped down the streets at high speeds. He obtained his driver's license and, for some time, drove cars for his friends in the gang. By the age of 18, he had purchased his own car with money earned from illegal activities. He frequently drove while under the influence of alcohol and banned substance. On one occasion, he caused a serious accident by crashing into a utility pole, which resulted in him being hospitalized. Although he lost his driver's license, he continued to drive stolen cars and even live-streamed his dangerous driving around town. As Che became more entrenched in organized crime, He escalated from minor crimes like petty theft and carjackings to more severe offenses, including robbery and banned substance dealing. He and his associates began to steal luxury cars on demand and targeted affluent individuals. Che took pride in being a bad guy. Despite being arrested multiple times, he consistently managed to evade significant penalties, often receiving only light sentences. Che had a captivating appearance and a charming personality, despite his reckless behavior and self-destructive lifestyle. Even as a teenager, he easily attracted the attention of girls. When his illegal activities started making money, he spent it lavishly to impress those he liked. However, his bad temper and aggressive nature prevented him from maintaining any meaningful relationships. Che was a manipulative bully who wasn't afraid to resort to violence. While he could initially charm a girl, most would leave once they recognized his true nature. Unfortunately, not everyone was fortunate enough to get away. In early 2019, Angel met a man while spending time with mutual friends. They were both the same age and attended the same university, quickly discovering that they had much in common. Their immediate chemistry led to a budding friendship that soon blossomed into a romantic relationship. Within a few weeks, they introduced each other to their families, indicating that they were serious about their commitment. Hattie and Nikki were pleased with their daughter's choice, as her boyfriend came from a good family and was a decent person. Similarly, his parents welcomed Angel warmly. They spent a lot of time at each other's homes. Their friends and family often joked about a possible wedding in the future. Just 6 months into their intense relationship, they unexpectedly broke up for unclear reasons. Her boyfriend initiated the breakup, leaving Angel feeling heartbroken. Shortly after, he began dating someone new, prompting Angel to distance herself from mutual friends to avoid seeing them together. She found herself isolated, without her boyfriend or friends. Though her family supported her, she fell deeper into sadness. Even focusing on her studies and work didn't provide much relief. During a challenging period in her life, Angel met someone who would become very important to her. By chance, she crossed paths with Che. He was immediately taken with her beauty. He approached her, asked why she seemed sad, suggested they take a walk and get coffee. Angel needed someone to confide in, and Che proved to be a surprisingly good listener. They exchanged phone numbers, quickly began talking and meeting regularly. Che made an effort to impress her with his kindness and support. Before long, Angel realized she was developing feelings for him. At that moment, she truly believed she had found someone deserving of her time, effort. Che tried to impress Angel by showering her with expensive gifts, he taking her to trendy clubs, restaurants, and concerts. She wanted to learn more about his job, but he was very good at concealing his illegal activities. One evening, Angel invited him to dinner at her parents' house. What was supposed to be a warm family meal turned into a heated argument due to Che's arrogant behavior, which upset Angel's parents. Afterward, Nikki, Angel's mother, expressed her concerns about Che and urged Angel to end the relationship. To avoid upsetting her parents, Angel told them that she and Che were just friends, promised to spend less time with him. However, Angel and Che continued their secret relationship, never thinking about breaking up. Che made reservations at fancy hotels for their romantic evenings together. Angel felt she was with a good man, she had fallen in love with him. Che was still in frequent contact with his girlfriend. They called each other many times a day and sent constant texts. He often inquired about her whereabouts, activities, companions. Trusting him, Angel shared everything, believing this was his way of showing he cared. Unfortunately, this was actually the start of his controlling and manipulative behavior. In just a few months, Che learned everything about Angel, her whereabouts, her friends, her work and school schedules. He earned her trust and started to distance her from friends he didn't like. He pressured Angel to lie to her parents, creating a rift between her and her family. By August 2019, his control grew stronger. He dictated her clothing choices, restricted her conversations, even banned her from wearing makeup. Che regularly checked her phone, deleting contacts he disapproved of. He constantly monitored her, questioning her about unplanned outings and showing up if she was out longer than usual. The situation escalated to the point where Angel couldn't greet a male acquaintance without provoking a fierce argument. Her parents started to notice significant changes in her behavior. Once lively, cheerful, Angel became pale and withdrawn. She stopped wearing makeup, started dressing in baggy clothes, and seemed constantly anxious. She became secretive, always clutching her phone and hurrying away to be alone whenever it rang. Her conversations with her mother and sisters dwindled, leading them to become suspicious. When anyone asked how she was doing, she insisted everything was fine, but her reassurances sounded less convincing each time. As a result, the distance grew between Angel and her family. Che took control of her life, turning her from a vibrant young woman into someone isolated and invisible, who believed her only worth was to him. Che began to control every part of Angel's life, even trying to persuade her to quit school and work, promising to handle everything for her. Despite this, Angel was determined to pursue her dreams. Che's control grew stronger. He accessed her social media accounts, installed a tracking app on her phone. He monitored her every move and conversation. He could appear anywhere at any time, which made Angel feel constantly anxious, on edge. Under his pressure, Angel got a tattoo of his name on her arm, as if he had branded her as his own. Che treated her like property. He would call her multiple times a day, even at night, insisting that she turn on her camera so he could see where she was and who was with her. Angel reached her breaking point, tried to end the relationship several times, but Che refused to let her go. What started as a romantic relationship turned into pure manipulation. Che effectively stalked her, controlling her every action, all under the guise of love and concern. In January 2020, Che and several friends were arrested for trying to steal a car, received 4-month prison sentences. For Angel, this seemed like an opportunity to break free from a toxic relationship that was going nowhere. However, she was wrong. Every day, Che was allowed to make a phone call, and he used it each evening to contact Angel. His friends watched her and reported back to him. Angel felt constantly monitored and powerless to escape her fear. At the end of May, Che was released from prison. He immediately went to Angel's house and caused a scene. When Angel tried to break up with him again, he demanded that she pay him back about £80, which he claimed to have spent on her before he was imprisoned. Angel quickly gave him all the money she had saved, but the harassment worsened. A week later, Che physically attacked Angel for the first time. Just a week after that, he assaulted her again, and a bystander, concerned for Angel's safety, called the police. However, Angel chose not to press charges, so Che faced no repercussions. On July 9, 2020, a neighbor of Che's called the police because he heard a woman screaming for help. At that time, Che had pinned Angel to the ground and hit her head against the floor. Although Angel needed medical help afterward, she did not report the incident. In the following months, she continued to experience psychological and physical abuse from Che. Fearful of what Che might do to her or her family, she remained silent about the situation and tried to endure it, even though she realized it couldn't last forever. In September of that year, Angel made the difficult decision to end her relationship for good. Che reacted strongly, physically attacking her, leaving her with scrapes and significant bruises on her face. After the incident, he appeared to calm down, even apologized, vowing to be more respectful in the future. However, Angel believed he wouldn't genuinely change and pushed to end the relationship entirely. She felt certain that the toughest and most dangerous challenges were still ahead, but she was prepared to face them. Che, after making several attempts to win Angel back, proposed that they should at least stay friends. Angel agreed, thinking that if he believed they were still on good terms, he might lose interest in her, stop pursuing her. On September 17, 2020, Angel went to work, later committed to picking up Che and his friend Rocco Sansom in their van. They frequently relied on her as their driver, especially when they were too drunk or under the influence of substances to drive themselves. That day was no exception. Angel arrived at the designated parking lot, where the van was parked. Che and Rocco were waiting. Once everyone was inside the van, they drove off. Angel and Che had a heated argument while driving. She pulled over, stopped the vehicle, and jumped out, running away quickly. This incident was recorded by street surveillance cameras. In the footage, Che can be seen angrily chasing after her. He catches her and forces her back into the van before taking the driver's seat himself. The vehicle then sped away, completely disregarding traffic laws. This situation amounted to a kidnapping, as Angel was trapped inside the van with two men. She was clearly terrified. It's unclear what she experienced during that time. In the next 15 minutes, the police received numerous reports about a suspicious van speeding away from town, with the driver behaving erratically. However, officers couldn't respond in time before a tragic event occurred. Suddenly, the passenger door of the van flew open, and Angel fell out at high speed, narrowly avoiding being struck by two cars following closely behind. Fortunately, the drivers reacted quickly and stopped their vehicles. They rushed to her aid. Someone called the police. Meanwhile, the van continued for about 100 kilometers per hour as if nothing had happened, then slowed down and returned to the scene. To any onlookers, it might have appeared that the driver had simply dropped something small and returned to retrieve it. Che approached the gathering calmly, told those present that the injured young woman was his girlfriend, that they had just argued. He said he wanted to break up with her and that she had lost control, attempting to jump out of the moving van. However, his account seemed unconvincing. He stayed on the scene, waited for the medics and police to arrive, repeating his story verbatim. It was evident that he believed Angel wouldn't survive. He seemed to be shifting all the blame onto her. His friend Rocco, who was also in the van, supported his version of events, mirroring his words. Despite her severe injuries, Angel was still breathing when she was rushed to the nearest hospital by ambulance. Unfortunately, the chances of saving her were low. She had broken ribs, broken limbs, a compression fracture in her spine, and many cuts, bruises. The most critical injury was a traumatic brain injury that led to significant bleeding in her brain. For several days, doctors fought tirelessly to save her life. She underwent multiple complex surgeries, including one to remove part of her skull to relieve pressure on her brain. Her heart stopped several times, and she was clinically dead on those occasions, but the medical team was able to revive her each time. Eventually, Angel was placed in a medically induced coma and put on life support. Her chances of waking up were nearly non-existent. The doctors were astonished that she had survived the initial accident, but their outlook was bleak. They warned the Lin family that, even if she miraculously survived and could breathe independently, she would likely remain bedridden and in a permanent vegetative state. They suggested considering the option of disconnecting her from the costly life support machines, but her parents refused to even think about it. Che and Rocco were held at the scene and taken to the police station for questioning. They both insisted they had done nothing wrong, claiming that Angel was out of control and that the incident stemmed from her attempts to take her own life. However, security camera footage showed a different reality. Che was charged with kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, causing serious physical harm. Rocco was arrested as an accomplice. Both remained in jail while waiting for their court appearances. The trial started in January 2022, with new charges of assault and harassment added. The defendants did not admit guilt. The prosecutors failed to provide clear evidence that Angel was intentionally thrown from the moving van. As a result, the jury could not come to a unanimous verdict, leading to the defendants receiving relatively light sentences. Rocco was sentenced to just 21 months in prison for his involvement, while Che received a 7-year sentence. The Attorney General referred Che Bauskil's sentence to the Court of Appeal under the lenient sentences scheme. In March 2022, the court increased his sentence to 12 years. However, Che will still be eligible for parole after serving 8 years. Despite the doctor's discouraging predictions, Angel continued to fight for her life. Although she suffered significant brain damage, she eventually began to breathe on her own. After a few months, the doctors lifted her from the medically induced coma. Initially, she did not recognize anyone, could not control her movements, and needed to be fed through a tube. There were no indications that she was aware of her surroundings. Meanwhile, Angel's cousin, Farron Davis, has set up a GoFundMe page to help her recover from the horrific incident. Kind strangers and members of her community have donated nearly £200,000, which will be used to renovate the family home, as they have received no assistance from the council. Angel is now doing well and will soon be able to move out of the flat and live with her family once the construction work is complete. Her sister, Rhiannon, is planning to move nearby from Newcastle so she can join her mother in looking after her. In the spring of 2022, her parents brought her home to care for her themselves. A year later, in May 2023, Angel amazed everyone by starting to respond to her environment. Just a month after that, she looked at her mom, Nikki, and called out, "Mom." Now, Angel Lynn is going through a lengthy rehabilitation process, has even begun to take her first steps. Although the doctors are skeptical about her returning to her previous life, her parents refuse to accept that possibility because their daughter has shown time and again that she is a fighter. October 1st, 2020, and the quiet neighborhood of Reedley, just outside Burnley, England, seemed like any other morning. Residents on Colne Road were starting their day, with kids heading to school and folks grabbing their morning coffee. But at 8:45 a.m., a call came into Lancashire Constabulary that would shatter the calm. When officers arrived, they were met with a scene that would haunt them, a home scarred by smoke and fire. Inside, the lifeless bodies of Dr. Saman Mir Sacharvi and her daughter, Vian Mangrio. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community, police scrambling for answers. Dr. Saman was a respected psychiatrist at the Lancaster and South Cumbria NHS Foundation Trust. Vian, a bright student at Marsden Heights High School in nearby Nelson, was known for her academic spark and enthusiasm for life. The two living together in their Colne Road home. But that morning, something had gone horribly wrong. The house showed signs of a big fire, smoke stains on the walls and charred furniture, but the flames hadn't consumed everything. Investigators noted something else: strange messages scrawled on the walls. Cryptic phrases like "my mom is evil and this is a cult house." Were these clues to what happened, or something more sinister? The police launched a full-scale investigation, cordoning off the house as forensic teams combed through the wreckage. The scene raised immediate questions. Was this a targeted act? Did the fire start accidentally, or was it set to hide something? And what about those eerie messages on the walls? Detectives began interviewing neighbors, asking if anyone had seen anything unusual in the days leading up to the tragedy. Had Saman or Vian mentioned any trouble? Did they have enemies? Or was there tension in their lives that no one knew about? Someone out there knew what happened, and detectives were determined to find them. Who could have targeted this beloved doctor and her promising daughter? To understand the weight of this true crime tragedy, let's take a moment to know Saman and Vian, who they were, where they came from, and the lives they built in the UK. Dr. Saman Mir Sacharvi was a woman of compassion and intellect. Born in Pakistan to a close-knit family, she was the eldest child and only daughter of her parents, now in their 80s. She was described by her brother as the apple of their eye, cherished for her ambition and warmth. From a young age, Saman excelled academically, and driven by a passion for helping others, she pursued a career in medicine, specializing in psychiatry. Her dedication to mental health defined her professional life. Saman moved to the UK in the early 2000s, settling in Burnley, where she joined the Lancaster and South Cumbria NHS Foundation Trust in February 2020 as a junior doctor in the specialist perinatal community mental health team. Her colleague, perinatal lead consultant, remembered her as approachable, empathetic, and a joy to work with, always forming strong bonds with patients, colleagues alike. During the global issue lockdown, Saman went beyond her duties, personally delivering prescriptions to women isolating at home, ensuring they received care when access was limited. Her kindness left a lasting mark on those she served. Vian Mangrio, Saman's daughter, attended Marsden Heights Community College in Nelson, where she shone as an outstanding student. Her head teacher praised her for having a rare blend of academic talent and enthusiasm for school life. Vian loved art. Her father, Kikit Mangrio, who lives in Doha, Qatar, after divorcing Saman in 2012, was to say that her loss left his life miserable and without purpose. He recalled her as a loving, caring young girl, beloved by everyone. The morning of October 1st, 2020, Saman and Vian's bodies were found. This discovery marked the beginning of a complex true crime investigation that revealed a series of alarming events. Just before 8:45 a.m., the Lancaster Constabulary received a call expressing concerns for the safety of the occupants at a semi-detached house on Colne Road. Officers quickly arrived at the location, a quiet street filled with modest homes where Simone and Vian had built their lives. What they encountered there was far from the tranquil suburban morning they had expected. Inside the house, the air was thick with the effects of a fire. Smoke stains covered the walls, and burnt furniture suggested a blaze that had been either put out or failed to spread significantly. The officers proceeded with caution. In the front bedroom upstairs, they discovered the body of Dr. Simone Sicharvi. She was lifeless. Evidence indicated she had been involved in a violent struggle. An autopsy revealed that she died from strangulation. She had also been attacked prior to her death. In the upstairs area, there were signs of attempts to start a fire, but it had not successfully ignited, leaving Simone's body only partially affected by the flames. In the lounge downstairs, the situation was more tragic. Vian Mangrio's body was discovered, badly burned, making it hard to identify her right away. The severity of the fire suggested it was intentional, as flames had engulfed much of the area around her. A woolen item was found around her neck and in her mouth. Bruising in her throat indicated that she likely died from asphyxiation. Although the fire damage made it challenging for the pathologist to determine the exact cause of death, the difference between the two locations, Simone upstairs and Vian downstairs, raised important questions. Why were the bodies in separate parts of the house? Was the fire set to destroy evidence, or was it part of a more extensive plan? The officers observed unsettling messages written on the walls. These phrases seemed intentionally misleading. Vian and Simone had recently been isolating since Vian was waiting for a test result, which was ultimately negative. The timing of the messages struck the officers as suspicious. In response, the house was secured. The major crime team from Lancaster Constabulary, led by Detective Superintendent, quickly took over the case, treating the deaths as a double murder investigation from the beginning. The presence of smoke and fire damage, along with the violent circumstances of Simone's death and the condition of Vian's body, indicated that this was a deliberate act rather than an accident. Officers started canvassing the neighborhood, going door to door to ask if anyone had witnessed or heard anything unusual in the days or hours before the discovery. Meanwhile, forensic teams gathered important evidence, finding traces of potent substances in both Simone and Vian's bodies, which suggested they had been incapacitated before their deaths. These substances were later identified in court as a mixture of a sedative, wine, and fruit in a smoothie, pointing to a chilling level of premeditation. The fires also seemed intentional, one in the lounge where Vian was discovered, another in the upstairs bedroom near Simone, and a third in the kitchen, where the police believed a kettle had been ignited to simulate an electrical fire. These details implied that the perpetrator was familiar with the house, having both access and time to arrange the scene. The investigation shifted to focus on Simone and Vian's close associates, people who had been in their home on September 30, 2020, and had the means to commit such a precise act. The discovery of the bodies marked a significant turning point for the police and deeply affected the lives of those who knew Simone and Vian. News spread rapidly through Reedley. By midday, neighbors gathered outside the police perimeter, leaving flowers and condolence notes. The police continued their work tirelessly, aware that every piece of evidence, including footprints and fibers, could bring them closer to solving the case. The investigation was in full progress, with detectives working to create a timeline of events from the previous day. They established that Simone had been at home, likely either working or preparing for the evening. Vian had returned from school around 3:25 p.m. The crucial question was, what occurred during the hours between Vian's return and the discovery of their bodies the following morning? A significant development occurred when detectives examined CCTV footage from Colne Road and surrounding areas. The cameras recorded a man visiting Simone's home on September 30th, arriving at approximately 11:26 a.m. and leaving later that evening. The man was identified as Shahbaz Khan, a 51-year-old handyman from Ribble Avenue in Burnley, who had previously done work at Simone's house. This connection raised concerns, as Khan's visit coincided with the estimated time of the crime. On October 4th, police arrested 51-year-old Khan, who is suspected of murder and arson with intent to endanger life. On October 6th, police obtained a warrant to hold him for an additional 36 hours for further questioning. Detective Superintendent Supt John Holmes urged anyone with information about the incident to contact the police, especially if they have CCTV footage, dash cam recordings, or witness accounts from the Colne Road area. The investigation into Khan intensified when officers searched his home on Ribble Avenue and discovered Saman's jewelry hidden in the loft, suggesting a deeper connection to the victims. Additionally, detectives found a purple Samsung phone at Khan's residence that contained Google searches from September 30th for terms like obsessed and define obsessed, indicating a concerning state of mind. Witness interviews provided important details. A neighbor remembered that Khan had done odd jobs at Saman's house over the years and described him as polite but somewhat reserved. Another neighbor noted that Khan's van was seen parked near Colne Road more often in the weeks before the incident, but there were no reports of suspicious behavior. Family members acknowledged Khan as a trusted handyman, and none suspected him of any wrongdoing. Khan was a father of 5 who originally came from Pakistan and had lived in Burnley for several years. He worked part-time at Tesco and also took on handyman jobs. Previously, in Pakistan, he was a computer network engineer, but in the UK, he focused on various odd jobs, including a garage conversion at Saman's home. This position allowed him to have insight into the family's life. The shocking discovery of £27,000 worth of jewelry hidden in Khan's loft, along with forensic evidence of staged fires and dangerous substances, identified him as the main suspect in this disturbing crime case. During his first interrogation, Khan's statements were confusing and strange. He claimed that a supernatural being attacked him and caused the incidents at Saman House. Prosecutor David McLaughlin later explained to Preston Crown Court that Khan's story was a weak attempt to imply that he was mentally unstable. Khan also claimed that Vian was upstairs while Saman was in the kitchen when he left the house, trying to shift the blame onto the victims or imaginary characters. On October 5th, while in custody, he threw himself across his cell, claiming that a supernatural force had pushed him. Detectives considered this behavior to be a performance rather than a genuine reaction. His claims quickly fell apart under investigation, as forensic evidence showed that the victims had traces of a sedative in their systems, indicating premeditation. Additionally, phone records revealed that Khan's device was active near Colne Road on September 30th, and CCTV footage confirmed that he left the house after 10 p.m., several hours after Vian returned from school at 3:25 p.m. Khan's wife, Rabia Shabazz, 44 years old, complicated the investigation by providing a false alibi. This raised suspicions that Khan may have either confided in her or pressured her to lie. On October 8, 2020, Khan was formally charged with 2 counts of murder and 1 count of arson with intent to endanger life. The charges highlighted the brutality of the crimes. Saman died from pressure to her neck, likely caused by ligature strangulation, and had been assaulted, while Vian's death was due to asphyxiation. Her body was severely burned to hide the evidence of the crime. The arson charge resulted from 3 intentional fires set in a lounge, upstairs bedroom, and kitchen. Prosecutors later explained that Khan was motivated by his obsession with Saman's jewelry. He planned to steal it by using a sedative-laced smoothie to incapacitate both Saman and Vian. When his plan escalated, he turned to violence, strangling Saman and asphyxiating Vian before setting fires to cover his actions. The messages written on the walls were likely attempts to mislead investigators. Although handwriting experts could not definitively connect the graffiti to Khan, its content indicated that he was familiar with the victim's situation during their global issue isolation. As Khan awaited trial, detectives worked diligently to gather and solidify their evidence. The trial commenced on June 14, 2021, at Preston Crown Court. Khan pleaded not guilty to 2 murder charges and 1 charge of reckless arson. His wife, Rabia Shabazz, was charged separately with perverting the course of justice for falsely claiming that Khan had been at home all day on September 30, 2020. The prosecution, led by David McLaughlin, presented a thorough case, arguing that Khan's actions were premeditated, cruel, and motivated by financial gain. McLaughlin dismissed Kahn's initial claims of supernatural involvement. Instead, Kahn suggested that someone else had entered the house after he left at 10 p.m. Kahn claimed that the jewelry in question had been entrusted to him for safekeeping while Saman was away, but the prosecution argued that Kahn's intention was theft, which escalated to murder when he was confronted. Kahn's defense initially asserted his innocence and indicated that his mental state should be examined. During his testimony, Kahn described his relationship with Saman and Vian, referring to Vian as if she were a daughter. He maintained that both victims were alive when he left the house. He also stated that medication had helped clarify his thoughts, retracting the supernatural power story but not providing any credible alternative suspect. On June 29, after 3 weeks of evidence, Kahn requested to dismiss the jury, expressing concerns about his mental health. However, the justice denied this request. The following day, June 30th, after being confronted with overwhelming evidence, including CCTV footage, phone records, and jewelry, Kahn pleaded guilty to all charges, 2 counts of murder and 1 count of arson. This sudden change took the courtroom by surprise, eliminating the need for the jury to deliberate further but extending the suffering of the victims' families, who had already endured weeks of distressing testimony. Rabia Shabaza's trial continued as she maintained her innocence regarding charges of perverting the course of justice. Her defense argued that she was naive and confused about dates due to stress, lack of sleep, and insufficient food, mistakenly believing Kahn was at Tesco on September 30th. In contrast, the prosecution asserted that her false statement made the day after Kahn's arrest was a deliberate attempt to protect him. On July 1st, after less than 2 hours of discussion, the jury found her guilty. The sentencing occurred on October 5, 2021. Kahn was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 34 years. The lengthy sentence reflected the premeditated and intentional nature of the murders, which were driven by financial motives. Rabia Shabaza's attempt to shield her husband, Kahn, by providing a false alibi led to her conviction for perverting the course of justice, earning her a 15-month prison sentence. Early in the investigation, a second suspect, a 56-year-old man, was arrested but released without charge, narrowing the focus to Kahn. Dr. Saman Mir Sacharvi's legacy endures through her compassionate work at Lancaster and South Cumbria NHS Foundation Trust, where she supported vulnerable patients during the 2020 lockdown, while Vian Mangrio's brilliance at Marsden Heights Community College continues to inspire her peers. Their loss reverberates through Reedley, a reminder of the enduring impact of 2 remarkable lives cut short on Colne Road. As of May 2025, there have been no significant updates on the case. Kahn is currently in prison, serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. This concludes the tragic story from Burnley, a crime tale that reveals the depths of human greed and the strength of those left behind. The Jansen family appeared to be a loving and supportive unit, like many other families. However, one day, everything changed dramatically. An unexpected event occurred in their home. This incident triggered a chain of events that devastated the family and shocked those around them. Law enforcement, friends, neighbors all sought to understand how this seemingly perfect family could unravel what actually happened behind closed doors. In the dense forests of British Columbia, Randy Jansen led an ordinary life in a small town called Langley. Known for its brick storefronts and cozy coffee shops, Langley was viewed as a peaceful haven. Randy experienced years of hard work and unfulfilled dreams that often brought him unhappiness. From a young age, Randy had a strong bond with his father, who worked at a local lumber mill. His father taught him the skills of woodworking. After graduating high school, Randy followed in his father's footsteps by securing a job at the same mill. The job was tough, requiring long hours and significant physical effort, but Randy was used to hard work. In Langley, the lumber mill was seen as a vital part of the local economy and way of life. For more than 10 years, he committed himself to the challenging routine of processing wood and transporting logs. Although the work was repetitive and tiring, it provided him with stability. Each day might have seemed the same, but Randy found meaning in the rhythm of his work and his role in the community. The lumber mill represented stability in Randy's life, while music served as his escape, a way for him to express emotions he often found difficult to put into words. Since childhood, music had been important to him. Over time, playing guitar and singing shifted from being just a hobby to a crucial outlet for his feelings. Randy often performed at a local bar in Langley, where residents gathered to relax after their long workdays and enjoy live music. On stage, he transformed from his usually quiet self into an engaging and energetic performer, captivating his audience. The townspeople appreciated his heartfelt performances, which were filled with authenticity and passion. At a local bar one ordinary evening, Randy met Laurel, a woman who would profoundly impact his life. Laurel, 6 years older than Randy, worked as a bartender and often watched his performances from behind the bar. She was confident, charismatic, well loved by the patrons for her ability to create a welcoming atmosphere and her friendly demeanor. What began as casual chats about music and life quickly developed into a deeper bond. Their mutual love for music and shared aspirations brought them closer. Laurel played the piano and, although her life had taken a different path, she had always dreamed of pursuing a professional music career. This common dream, paired with genuine interest in each other, soon evolved into something much more significant. Life at the lumber mill went on as usual for Randy, but everything changed with Laurel's presence. Their relationship grew stronger as they started planning their future together. Although Langley felt familiar and comfortable, it began to seem too small for the aspirations they had. They dreamed of a life where music could be more than just a pastime. They wanted it to be the core of their future. Randy's days at the mill, his nights performing at the bar, and his evenings with Laurel filled him with a sense of purpose, love. He hoped for what lay ahead. Randy and Laurel frequently looked back on their wedding day in 1990. It was a modest ceremony with just their closest friends and family, creating a warm and intimate setting. The event featured live music, including a special song that Randy sang for Laurel, marking the start of their loving journey together. A few years later, their daughter Emily was born. She quickly became the center of their family. Randy often expressed how Emily was the best thing that ever happened to him. Anyone who knew them could see the deep love he had for her. Emily was only 8 years old when her life changed drastically. She started suffering from severe headaches that were so painful she could no longer participate in her music activities. From a young age, Emily had a natural talent for singing, which amazed her parents and earned her awards in competitions. She was living a lively life, taking vocal lessons and dreaming of becoming a singer. Her parents, encouraged by her success, did everything possible to support her dreams. Initially, Randy and Laurel struggled to understand their daughter's condition. They visited multiple doctors and underwent numerous medical tests, but none provided clear answers, leaving them confused. Emily had to leave school and start home-based learning because the bright lights and loud noises in classrooms worsened her severe headaches. Her room turned into a dim sanctuary where she spent most of her time. Randy and Laurel took turns caring for her, trying their best to alleviate her pain and offer comfort during her difficult times. After thorough medical evaluations, the doctors diagnosed Emily with migraines. This news deeply affected her entire family. The medications they prescribed provided only slight relief, easing her pain a little but never completely stopping the headaches. The music she previously cherished, which brought her so much happiness, was now unattainable. Once a vibrant and energetic young woman, Emily began to withdraw, spending most of her time in silence, darkness. Randy and Laurel were determined to find a solution for their daughter's condition. They explored numerous treatments, consulted many specialists, and looked into alternative therapies, but nothing provided the lasting relief they had been hoping for. The medical outlook was bleak. Migraines are often chronic, and many people suffer from them for life. Statistics revealed that around 53% of migraine sufferers cannot drive because of their symptoms, 30% find it difficult to finish their education, and 34% encounter issues in maintaining employment. Although these figures indicated that Emily's situation was relatively common, they offered little comfort to her parents, as they witnessed her once vibrant spirit fade. Randy went through a really tough time during these years. Music, which had once been his escape, now reminded him painfully that Emily could no longer share in the joy it brought her. Playing guitar in the evenings felt empty without her voice alongside him, and performing at the local bar, which used to be a source of joy for him, no longer felt fulfilling. He began to spend more time at home to support Emily as much as he could. However, as her condition worsened, both Randy and Laurel felt increasingly powerless. Their vibrant daughter, who was once full of life and determination, now isolated herself in her room, avoiding the world and its noise. Randy continued to work, but his thoughts were constantly with Emily. Each morning, he hoped to find a way to relieve her suffering. By the time Emily turned 18, her condition had worsened significantly. Her migraine episodes became more frequent and intense, sometimes lasting for several days. This constant pain made it difficult for her to study and maintain friendships. Despite these obstacles, Emily remained determined. She enrolled in the Fine Arts program at the University of British Columbia, aspiring to become an opera singer. For Emily, going to university was not just about academics, it was an opportunity to regain a sense of normalcy and pursue the life she had always dreamed of. Despite feeling physically exhausted and experiencing frequent pain, Emily committed herself to staying active. She took vocal lessons, learned music theory, studied art history and literature. She also participated in student events and concerts whenever possible. Her classmates admired her determination to engage in university life despite the challenges she faced. However, beneath this outward involvement, Emily was battling significant struggles. She frequently had to miss classes and catch up on her studies alone. The strong medications prescribed for her migraines left her feeling tired, drowsy, and weak. Her treatment plan included triptans, anticonvulsants, and antidepressants to help manage her symptoms. But these medications also had serious side effects, such as depression, difficulty concentrating, and a decline in her overall health. Over time, Emily chose to limit her medication intake as much as possible to lessen its effects on her body and began exploring alternative ways to manage her condition. Emily focused on meditation and breathing exercises, used cold compresses on her head, and stayed away from bright lights, strong smells, and loud noises. Her room became a safe space where she could escape anything that increased her pain. During her worst migraine episodes, she would sometimes stay in complete darkness for entire days, while her parents took turns caring for her and doing their best to alleviate her discomfort. Despite these challenges, Emily worked hard to maintain a sense of normal life. She kept in touch with her friends, even though she couldn't see them as frequently as before. Sometimes, she had to cancel plans at the last moment due to sudden migraine attacks. However, her friends remained supportive, visiting her at home and spending time with her to ensure she didn't feel alone. Despite her challenges, Emily remained committed to the things she loved. Her desire to return to music and live a fulfilling life never faltered, even as the journey became increasingly difficult. On May 7, 2015, Randy shocked everyone in his life with a Facebook post. He revealed some unimaginable actions he had taken in the prior 10 days. He started the post by expressing his love for his daughter, Emily, whom he described as an exceptional daughter, talented, intelligent, and kind. Emily brought immense joy to their family, filling their home with laughter and always willing to assist others, even while facing her own struggles. Unfortunately, her illness had robbed her of so much, forcing her to give up dreams she had worked tirelessly to achieve. Emily had been experiencing migraines since elementary school. The persistent pain caused her to fall into deep depression, making it common for her to endure days without relief. Randy observed how his daughter watched her classmates enjoy normal lives while she spent her time in hospitals or isolated in her dark, quiet room. Despite her efforts to hope for a brighter future, nothing seemed to alleviate her suffering. Randy worked at a lumber mill, but when he wasn't working, he dedicated all his time to Emily. He often told his friends that she was his whole world and that he couldn't bear the thought of life without her. Watching her in pain and feeling powerless to help was pushing him toward despair. Friends noted how Randy shared his struggles with them, making it evident how deeply he was affected emotionally. In this Facebook post, he confessed to taking a gun and ending Emily's life, explaining that he did it to free her from her constant pain. He described his vision of her as an angel soaring above the clouds, her long hair flowing in the wind, finally at peace. But he didn't stop there. Randy also revealed that he had taken the life of his wife, Laurel, because he couldn't bear the thought of her enduring the heartbreak of losing their daughter. A few days later, he also ended the life of his sister, Shelley, claiming he wanted to spare her from the shame of his actions. In the post, Randy shared Emily's journey in her battle against illness, highlighting her incredible strength and resilience. Unfortunately, despite her efforts, the illness had taken its toll. Randy expressed his helplessness as he watched her suffer daily, knowing he couldn't change her situation. He often told friends that he would do anything to support Emily, and ultimately, he felt this was the only way to help her. At the end of his Facebook post, Randy mentioned that his family was now in a better place, free from suffering. He expressed sorrow for his actions, took full responsibility, and apologized to anyone he had hurt. The post closed with the haunting phrase, "Rest in peace, my little family." After Randy's post went live, his friends and acquaintances immediately alerted the police out of concern for Randy's family. They were shocked by the content and wanted to ensure everyone's safety. Law enforcement acted quickly after receiving several calls. Officers were sent to Randy's home to look into the matter. One of Randy's closest friends, Brian Jones, was filled with fear and confusion as he read the Facebook post. Initially, he hoped it was just a mistake or a cruel joke. However, when he saw the signature, Daddy-O, Hugs and Kisses, a nickname Randy had used since school, Brian understood that Randy had truly written those words. This left Brian in shock and disbelief. He had always seen Randy as a kind and caring person, deeply devoted to his family. The thought that his friend could commit such an act or even possess a firearm was unfathomable to him. Brian remembered how lovingly Randy spoke of his family, making it difficult for him to grasp how things had taken such a tragic turn. The seriousness of the situation struck him immediately, and he knew he needed to respond quickly. He left work early and made his way to Shelley's house, trying to call Randy as he went. Each unanswered call only increased his worry. When Brian got to Shelley's house, he saw a pile of undelivered newspapers on the porch. This was unusual because Shelley was always dependable and took her responsibility seriously. Her old van was in the driveway, the curtains were tightly shut. The yard was eerily silent, with no signs of life. Brian knocked on the door multiple times, but no one answered. The atmosphere felt unsettling and unnaturally quiet. Shelley had become a private person after her parents died. She lived by herself, had no children, and hardly spoke to her neighbors. Her primary job was delivering newspapers, and she was recognized for her reliability, punctuality. When Brian noticed the newspapers piled up without being picked up, he became worried and called the police. The dispatcher told him that he wasn't the only one worried about the family. A patrol unit was already on its way to investigate. When the police arrived, they tried to reach Randy Jansen, who was inside his house. They saw him through a second-floor window with a gun. The officers used loudspeakers and attempted to call him, but Randy did not reply. Understanding the seriousness of the situation, the officers proceeded cautiously to prevent further escalation. The house was surrounded, and negotiators began their work, but Randy did not show any intention to surrender or communicate. After several hours, the situation became much more critical. Randy set the house on fire, and officers saw smoke rising from the upper floor. They tried to get inside, but the flames spread too quickly, blocking access through the windows. Officers noticed a body wrapped in a sheet on the first floor, but they couldn't reach it to confirm its identity. Within minutes, the fire took over the entire house. When firefighters arrived, the house was fully engulfed in flames, and they could not save it. Investigators discovered 3 bodies in the charred remains of the house on Lanberis Road in Rosedale. 19-year-old Emily was found in her bedroom, wrapped in a sheet. 50-year-old Laurel was located in the kitchen, covered with a blanket. Both women had suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the head. Randy's body was located in a second-floor bedroom. He had died by suicide using a firearm and setting the house ablaze. The positioning of his body and the presence of the weapon indicated that Randy was experiencing severe emotional distress when he made the choice to end his life. When police arrived at the home of Randy's sister in Langley, British Columbia, they found her body in the living room. She had been shot twice in the head and was covered with a blanket. No signs of a struggle, indicating that Randy had likely caught her by surprise. Over the past year, Emily's health had worsened significantly. Doctors had to give her morphine injections to manage her severe pain, and these were used as a last resort. Neighbors often witnessed her parents assisting her into their home after her hospital visits. Emily was so weak that she required help to walk, which was heartbreaking for everyone who knew the family. Randy Jansen, Emily's father, dedicated himself to caring for his family despite facing numerous challenges. A year prior to the tragic events, he sought assistance from their family doctor due to ongoing insomnia and intense stress. He shared his struggles with witnessing his daughter's pain. The doctor suggested using sedatives and advised Randy to focus on getting more rest, but Randy refused the medication, feeling it wouldn't truly solve his problems. Brian noted that Randy had never indicated any thoughts of self-harm or intentions to harm others. He described Randy as a calm and hardworking individual always willing to help. Randy consistently put his family first, so no one could have anticipated he was capable of such actions. Brian observed that Randy had reached his breaking point. He could no longer endure watching his daughter suffer, which led him to make a heartbreaking decision. Neighbors who had known Randy since he was a child found it hard to reconcile this event with the kind and gentle person they remembered. They noted that he had never shown any signs of aggression or cruelty. His actions appeared to stem from a sense of desperation and an inability to cope with the immense pain affecting his family. One neighbor recalled Randy saying that if his daughter were to die, he wouldn't have a reason to live. Emily's last tweet, posted just 4 days before the tragedy, stated, "I complain about the pain, but at least I'm here to feel it. I thank God for the chance to live." In Emily's Twitter account, she wrote, "For the first time in 2 years, I've gone 12 hours without pain. I'm so tired of hurting, but I need to keep going." Her resilience was clear, despite the immense challenges she faced. This message expressed her determination to cherish life despite the significant suffering she faced. Her social media posts often reflected her struggle to stay positive in the midst of her illness, highlighting her hope even when times were tough. Emily was remembered as a kind and caring young woman who made an effort to stay connected with her community. She loved music and sang at the local church whenever her health allowed. Many residents of Langley have fond memories of her performances, but as her health declined, she was able to attend church less often. Despite her challenges, she remained generous and thoughtful, baking with her mother, sharing treats with neighbors. On her good days, she also helped local children with their homework. Laurel, Emily's mother, did everything possible to support her daughter. In a Twitter post, she expressed her feelings, saying, "Emily is back in the hospital, praying to God they can help her. I feel so helpless." These words showed the deep pain and despair she experienced while watching her daughter suffer. Although Laurel was emotionally drained, she was determined not to give up and continuously sought ways to improve Emily's condition. Similarly, Shelley, Randy's sister, could not predict the tragedy that would occur. The family never imagined their lives would be changed in such a devastating manner. Over the past year, Randy often shared with friends the heavy burden and stress he felt due to Emily's illness. No one could have predicted that he would eventually become so emotionally fragile that he would consider harming his family. Randy struggled to manage the emotional strain. Despite their shared despair, the family attempted to support one another, but their situation continued to worsen, leading to an unforeseen and tragic outcome. With the details now revealed, it is obvious that feelings of despair, hidden challenges, and deep hopelessness led to an unexpected tragedy. The story of the Jansen family serves as a sobering reminder that even within seemingly stable homes, deep pain can linger just beneath the surface, occasionally breaking out in unpredictable ways. It was a cold, quiet night, but something frightening was about to unfold in the woods near Altrincham. A car stopped on the deserted road. The driver, a 19-year-old, got out and looked around nervously. In the passenger seat was Alex Rada, only 15 years old and unaware that this night would change his life forever. What began as a secret between them had grown into something dangerous. Trust had been broken, emotions were running high, soon everything would take a deadly turn. But what really happened that night? The Rhoda family enjoyed a quiet and happy life in a village in Cheshire, northeastern England. Their home was warm and welcoming, shared by Lisa, her husband Adam, and their first child, Adam Jr. For many years, they had hoped to grow their family. Nearly a decade later, their dream was realized in what Lisa called a miraculous event. On March 5, 2004, they welcomed their second son, Alex Rada. As Alex grew up, Lisa noticed he had interests that were different from many other children. He enjoyed playing with her makeup and handbags. When he turned 13, Alex bravely told his parents a personal truth: he was gay. Lisa and Adam had suspected this for a while and welcomed his disclosure with open arms, offering their full support. However, Adam was worried, not about Alex's identity, but about how society might react to him. Unfortunately, his concerns were valid. At school, Alex faced teasing from some classmates, especially from boys who had difficulty accepting those who didn't fit their expectations. Despite this, Alex remained confident. Unlike many of his peers, he never felt the need to hide who he was. At Holmes Chapel Comprehensive School, Alex formed a close group of friends, predominantly girls. They cared for him deeply and supported him completely. These friendships acted as a shield when he faced unkindness, helping him thrive without letting negativity affect him. Full of joy and confidence, Alex was known for his infectious laughter. A bright student, he was also very active on social media, where he enjoyed sharing snippets of his life, his singing, dancing, and laughter. One of his accounts had gained over 4,000 followers. He had a uniquely close relationship with his father, one that resembled friendship. By the time Alex turned 15, he had become quite popular, with his phone frequently buzzing with messages from friends and admirers. However, one message he received one evening particularly caught his attention. It was from Matthew Mason, an older boy known for his mysterious online presence. Something about it made Alex pause. Matthew was a 19-year-old from the neighboring town of Ollerton. He grew up in a wealthy and religious family, living on a large estate valued in the millions. Every Sunday, they attended church together. At school, Matthew was known for being composed. Like Alex, he graduated from Holmes Chapel Secondary and went on to study agricultural engineering. He was a member of the Young Farmers Organization and worked part-time as an apprentice mechanic. In his spare time, he enjoyed fishing with his father, with whom he had a strong bond. At that time, Matthew was also dating a girl named Caitlin Lancashire. In October 2019, Alex shared with Georgia, one of his closest friends, that he had been receiving messages from Matthew. Georgia was surprised because she had known Matthew from school and had never seen him show any interest in men or suggest that he was bisexual. The situation felt strange. Alex and Matthew were from completely different backgrounds. They had never associated with each other socially. Without social media, they might never have met. Georgia warned Alex to be cautious. However, as the messages kept coming, Alex began to feel excited. He added Matthew as a friend on a social media platform, and their conversations quickly became more frequent. For Alex, this felt like the start of something special, his first experience with love. He had never been in a relationship before, and it was exhilarating, as if he was entering a whole new world. Initially, Alex and Matthew's exchanges were light, casual, but over time, they grew flirtatious and more intimate. Matthew complimented Alex's looks. Soon they began sharing photos. One night, after drinking too much at a bar, Matthew made a poor choice. He sent Alex an explicit photo of himself. Alex's friends noted that he often didn't understand the seriousness of situations, seeing them as jokes. Because of this, he viewed Matthew's message as part of a playful flirtation. Things became more serious when Matthew sent a video of a compromising nature. As their online relationship grew, Matthew proposed they meet in person and offered to pick Alex up, but Alex declined, saying his father wouldn't allow it. Despite this, they continued to exchange hundreds of messages. Wanting to know more about Matthew, Alex looked into his social media accounts, only to discover that Matthew was already in a relationship. This revelation filled Alex with frustration and doubt, making him question everything between them. Determined to find out the truth, Alex messaged Matthew's girlfriend, Caitlin, the girl he had seen in several of Matthew's posts. On November 3rd, Alex asked Caitlin if she was dating Matthew. When she confirmed it, Alex revealed that he had been secretly involved with Matthew for the past 2 to 3 weeks. Caitlin was stunned. Alex shared details of their explicit conversations and explained that he only learned about Matthew's relationship after investigating him online. According to media reports, jealousy was a significant factor in Alex's actions. An hour after speaking with Caitlin, Alex confronted Matthew, informing him that he had told Caitlin the truth. Alex's frustration was evident as he accused Matthew of being deceptive, both to Caitlin and to him. He insisted that Matthew needed to be honest because Caitlin deserved it after 2 years together. But Alex had already made the decision to reveal the truth himself. Matthew, who came from a strict religious background, was extremely afraid of his secrets getting out by Alex. In a panic, he denied any accusations to Caitlin and called Alex a liar. This marked a troubling change in the relationship between Alex and Matthew. Feeling trapped, Alex threatened to leak an explicit photo he had of Matthew. Reports indicate that later that same day, Matthew made Alex a beneficiary on his bank account and transferred over £50 to him. By this point, Caitlin had already ended her relationship with Matthew. Despite their issues, on November 9th, Alex and Matthew met in person for the first time and became physically involved. Their secret relationship continued over the next 2 weeks. While everything seemed fine to outsiders, the payments to Alex didn't cease. Matthew was not ready for the truth to surface, but everything came to a head on December 12, 2019. After weeks of threats and pressure, Matthew lost control. On that cold, rainy night, he picked Alex up from his home and drove him to a remote forested area near Altrincham, claiming they were going to have another intimate encounter. However, once they arrived, Matthew violently attacked Alex with a wrench he had brought along. After committing this brutal act, Matthew drove to a friend's farm, hoping to destroy any evidence linking him to the crime. To create an alibi, he then casually went to 2 different bars, meeting friends for drinks as if nothing had happened. At one bar, he took a selfie and shared it on social media, further emphasizing his facade of a typical night out. Later, he even took a picture of himself smiling in bed, with his bare torso showing, which he sent to Caitlin to strengthen his alibi. In the middle of the night, he discovered Alex's phone on the passenger seat of his car. Aware of the damaging information it contained, he quickly disposed of it. As the night went on, Matthew returned to the forest. He attempted to move Alex's lifeless body to the roadside and tried to lift him into his Renault Clio. However, after several unsuccessful attempts, he abandoned the body there and walked away. Alex's parents were becoming more and more worried about his disappearance. After they were unable to contact him, they reported him as missing. Soon, the police, friends, and family were all frantically searching for him. A police officer from Cheshire texted Matthew, asking him to reach out regarding Alex's disappearance. By morning, the stark reality emerged. Garbage collectors stumbled upon Alex's severely disfigured body, found half-naked and bearing multiple wounds. When law enforcement arrived at the forest crime scene, they discovered that Alex had endured at least 15 blows to the head in what officials labeled a brutal and ruthless attack. A witness had unknowingly implicated him the night before. A photo of a vehicle parked by the roadside was taken, and when the police traced it, they linked it to Matthew. On November 13th, just before noon, officers arrested him on a highway nearby. Despite his efforts to remove the evidence, dried blood was still evident on his car. A search of his car's trunk revealed a garbage bag filled with incriminating items, a blood-stained green sweater, the wrench used in Alex's attack, and a large padded jacket that belonged to Alex. With compelling evidence against him, Matthew was taken into custody and formally charged with the crime. Investigators traced the unfortunate path of Alex and Matthew's relationship, which began with curiosity but ended in horrific violence. Their online interactions often focused on money, culminating in a crucial conversation moments before Alex's violent death. Records indicate that after an initial payment, Matthew had sent Alex a total of £1,270, supposedly for their meetings and to guarantee his silence. The final payment of £100 was sent just 5 days before the murder. As the investigation continued, unsettling new information came to light. Matthew's internet search history revealed his disturbing mindset. He had looked up methods to kill someone. His searches included queries like what happens if you push someone down the stairs, as well as information on poisons and unsolved missing person cases in Cheshire. One of Alex's friends mentioned that when Matthew first contacted Alex to set up their last meeting, Alex was excited. However, after a second phone call, he started to feel uneasy. Alex even texted his friend, questioning whether it was odd that the meeting was in a secret, special location. By that time, Alex sensed that something was wrong. Despite his concerns, he ultimately decided to go, likely because he needed the money. Moments after entering Matthew's car, Alex shared one final image on his social media story. It was a simple photo of the car's interior with a small heart emoji at the bottom. This was the last message Alex ever posted. His closest friends, who often discussed his new relationship with him, grew increasingly concerned over time, particularly because he kept asking for more money. At one point, Matthew told Alex that he was having financial difficulties and could no longer send Alex money. However, shortly after that, he transferred nearly £700 to Alex. Alex's friends, whose names are kept confidential for legal reasons, later informed the police that they were aware of the wrongdoing and had expressed their concerns to Matthew. Despite their advice, Alex decided to continue with his actions. The trial started on January 25, 2021, at Chester Crown Court. The jury learned that the two individuals had only known each other for a few months but had been involved in a secret and illegal relationship during that period. Under English law, a relationship between a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old is considered unlawful because the age of consent is 16. This means that any intimate activity involving someone under 16 is strictly prohibited, regardless of their willingness. During his testimony in court, Matthew acknowledged hitting Alex with a wrench but sought to explain his actions by saying he lost control due to being blackmailed by Alex. He described their initial interactions, which began in October 2019 with casual conversations. Over time, however, Alex reportedly started sending late-night messages that included personal and suggestive inquiries, such as whether Matthew was clothed. He also claimed that Alex had attempted to attack him prior to his death. Matthew mentioned that he was struggling financially and had lost friends, family as a result of the situation. Although he did not clearly specify what the payments were for, he insisted that he was under immense pressure. Furthermore, he expressed feelings of shame and discomfort after becoming intimate with Alex. At one point, Matthew recognized that his actions were wrong, not only because Alex was male but also due to his age. During the trial, prosecutors shared all the details of Alex's conversations with Caitlin, who was Matthew's girlfriend at the time. One of the detectives strongly disagreed with Matthew's assertion that the murder was spontaneous. The detective argued instead that Matthew had carefully planned the attack and had tricked Alex into going to a secluded place, thinking that no one would discover his intentions. During the victim impact statements, Alex's parents, Adam and Lisa, honored their son with heartfelt words, describing him as a beautiful and loving child. Through tears, Lisa shared that losing a child in such a horrific way felt like living in hell. She highlighted that Alex was raised in a loving environment, not a fearful one, and he was always proud of himself, never needing to hide or pretend. Lisa condemned Matthew's actions, noting that despite his early admission of guilt, Matthew put their family through additional trauma in a selfish effort to lessen his sentence. She expressed that he didn't consider the immense pain he caused both families. Lisa described Matthew as the most selfish and calculating person she had ever met, criticizing his attempts to blame Alex and tarnish his reputation. During the trial, Adam reflected on his son as a cheerful and respectful young man who always considered other people's feelings. He acknowledged that he could never fully recover from the loss and that their lives would be forever changed. After a month-long trial and over 9 hours of jury deliberation, the jury rejected Matthew's account of the events and found him guilty by a majority vote of 10-2. As he sat in the defendant's chair, Crying, the judge announced his sentence. Because he used a weapon during the crime, the mandatory minimum sentence was set at 25 years. The judge characterized the murder as premeditated, indicating it was carefully planned and executed with no remorse. He noted that although Alex may have initiated contact, Matthew not only responded but also actively encouraged an intimate relationship. The judge emphasized that Matthew was significantly more experienced than Alex, who was still young and emotionally immature. Additionally, he stated that Matthew had intentionally created the situation. While this was not Matthew's first intimate experience, it was Alex's first. The judge concluded that Alex's naive demands were influenced by the intimate offenses committed by Matthew, so the responsibility for what happened did not lie with Alex. In deciding Matthew's sentence, the judge emphasized his total lack of empathy, his complete disregard for the victim and the victim's grieving family. As a result, in January 2021, he was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum of 28 years before being eligible for parole. However, on June 2021, Matthew's legal team filed an appeal against this sentence. After considering both written and oral arguments, a panel of 3 appellate judges concluded that the original sentence was too long and reduced the minimum term from 28 years to 26 years. Matthew faced a deep internal conflict as he struggled to accept his own gender and feared rejection. This unresolved conflict caused him unimaginable pain and destruction. In his desperate attempt to avoid confronting his reality, he not only compromised his own future but also hurt someone who accepted him without shame or fear. On February 17, 2023, in Hexham, England, friends and family gathered to honor 15-year-old Holly Newton at her funeral. Holly was a beloved teenager, known for her kindness. Hundreds of mourners participated in a procession to Hexham Abbey to pay their respects. Holly's mother, Michaela Trussler, shared heartfelt memories of her daughter, stating, "Some people are just too good for this world, and Holly was one of them." Holly's white coffin, decorated with purple flowers and messages of sympathy, was carried along the high street by 4 black horses dressed in purple jackets, her favorite color. One message read, "Sleep tight, beautiful Holly, in the sky until we meet again. Love you forever." She was remembered as a bright, caring young woman with a promising future. Her family and friends described her as compassionate, someone who made a positive impact on everyone around her. Holly enjoyed spending time with friends and engaging in social activities, easily connecting with others thanks to her friendly personality. Holly met Logan MacPhail while participating in Army Cadets, a youth organization focused on military training and activities for young people. This setting often unites individuals with shared interests in discipline and teamwork, which likely helped them bond initially. Their relationship started like a typical teenage romance as they enjoyed each other's company and shared interests. However, as their relationship developed, it became increasingly troubled due to Logan's controlling behavior. Logan's controlling behavior became evident in several ways. He insisted on knowing where Holly was at all times and interfered with her social media by changing her passwords, limiting her ability to connect with others. This is a common sign of someone trying to dominate their partner. Holly's friends and family observed that she was becoming increasingly isolated. Despite these warning signs, Holly initially stayed in a relationship with Logan, which is often the case for teenagers who may not fully recognize the signs of an unhealthy relationship. Michaela mentioned that Logan was Holly's first and only boyfriend, that their relationship had typical teenage ups and downs. Logan spent weekends with Holly's family, and her mother and stepfather were unaware that he was putting on a facade when he visited their home. However, the issues in Holly and Logan's relationship continued to escalate. Eventually, Holly chose to end the relationship due to Logan's obsessive behavior. He struggled to accept the breakup, became even more fixated on her. Michaela observed that her caring and mature daughter was more emotionally developed than Logan, yet when Holly tried to break up with him, he resorted to emotional manipulation, which frightened her. Michaela said she didn't realize the extent of the turmoil Holly was experiencing at that time. Logan had become fixated on Holly, believing that if he couldn't have her, no one else could. She also noted that she didn't recognize the warning signs of his controlling behavior until it was too late, and she was unaware of the emotional distress Holly was facing while trying to break up with Logan. Logan's reaction to the breakup was intense. He started following Holly around town, attempted to control her life. On the night of January 26th, he appeared unexpectedly outside her house and had to be taken home by the police. Holly and her parents were planning to meet with the police to discuss their concerns about Logan, but a tragic event occurred. After Logan showed up at their home uninvited and insisted on speaking to Holly, her mother, McCalla, reached out to Northumbria Police for help. They scheduled a meeting for 4 p.m. on January 27th, but Holly requested to delay it so she could go out with friends after school. The meeting was postponed to the evening, but just hours before it was set to happen, a terrible incident occurred involving Holly. In the investigation of Holly's case, detectives uncovered disturbing CCTV footage that showed the moments leading up to her death. The timeline of events from the day after Logan appeared uninvited at Holly's home was pieced together. Unable to accept their breakup, MacPhail left his school early the next day, carrying a kitchen knife in his backpack. He took a bus to Hexham, waited for Holly to go into town. Dressed entirely in black, with a face mask and baseball cap to hide his identity, MacPhail followed Holly and her friends as they visited a leisure center for about 45 minutes. During this time, he also sent several voice messages to people close to Holly, trying to persuade her to meet him in person. After following Holly, MacPhail, then 16, waited at a bus stop and asked to speak to Holly after she came out of the pizza shop. He then lured her into an alleyway and attacked her. MacPhail inflicted 36 knife wounds, including 5 defensive wounds, in the attack earlier in the evening. When her friend heard her scream, he rushed out of the shop to help, but was also stabbed in the shoulder and leg. Shortly after 5:10 p.m. on Friday, January 27, 2023, the police were alerted about the serious assault of a boy and girl in the Priestpopple area of the town center. Emergency services arrived and found the two in a nearby alleyway with several stab wounds. They were both taken to the hospital. Despite the medical team's efforts, Holly died from 36 injuries. She had broken up with MacPhail just 6 days prior to the attack. Holly's friend, whose identity is protected for legal reasons, received treatment and was later discharged. Officers quickly arrested 16-year-old Logan MacPhail at the scene after he was held by courageous bystanders in a bus shelter. The camera footage shows him identifying himself and naming his victim when the police arrived. He then made what appeared to be a confession, saying she was being too horrible to him, while speaking with an officer in the back of a police van. MacPhail later refused to share his date of birth, claiming he can't read or write, he know nothing. After the attack, MacPhail was charged with killing Holly Newton and injuring another 16-year-old. During police interviews, MacPhail showed a disturbing lack of emotion and admitted that he intended to kill Holly, claiming it was because she treated him horribly. It took 18 months for the case to go to court because MacPhail's lawyers argued that his learning disabilities and autism diagnosis made him unfit to stand trial, meaning he wouldn't fully understand the legal process. However, after reviewing evidence from several experts, the judge determined that MacPhail could participate in the proceedings. Throughout the trial, the defense suggested that his various issues meant he didn't grasp the consequences of his actions, but the jurors disagreed. Justice Hilliard addressed, stating, Logan aimed to lure Holly into the alleyway, a secluded area where you believed you could attack her without anyone intervening. Hilliard believed Logan had already decided to harm her, as Logan realized from her reactions at the bus stop that she was not interested in rekindling his relationship. Fueled by resentment and jealousy, Logan still managed to plan his attack. Logan waited for the right moment, convinced her to move deeper into the alley. After ensuring a passerby had left, then you took out his knife and launched a brutal assault on her. The judge pointed out that Holly suffered severe knife Logan to her jaw, skull, spine, and shoulder during the attack. Justice Hilliard remarked that inflicting such harm was a horrifying act. Holly's mother was prevented from reaching her in the alley or seeing her in the ambulance due to the dreadful state she was in. The attack was so forceful that the knife broke, with the blade bending significantly. The pathologist mentioned that encountering a knife in such a damaged condition is extremely rare. The judge stated, he believed you intended to kill her and understood the finality of death. It appears MacPhail carried the knife that day to intimidate Holly by harming himself and decided to attack her when he realized their relationship wouldn't be rekindled just before the incident. Just as Hilliard emphasized, Holly had every right to end the relationship and choose to spend time with others. In concluding his remarks during sentencing, Hilliard acknowledged the significance of the relationship to MacPhail, especially considering his troubled home life. His speech impediment hindered his ability to form relationships and friendships with others, making his bond with Holly's particularly valuable, the judge noting that this contributed to MacPhail's struggle to accept the relationship's end. He noted that while MacPhail expressed remorse, he also demonstrated a tendency to blame Holly. His testimony revealed that he had convinced herself that Holly treated him poorly. Before the verdict was announced, Holly's mother made an emotional statement about the day she learned what happened to her daughter. McCullough said that in the months before her murder, it was clear that Holly was unhappy and no longer wanted to continue the relationship. Because she was so young, she didn't know how to get out of it. For Holly, she often felt sorry for people, which is why she kept going back and moving forward. She said that on Friday, January 27, 2023, their lives changed forever. She mentioned that she had kissed her 4 children goodbye as they left for school, and one of them never returned home. She expressed her disbelief about how any parent could understand receiving a phone call from a stranger saying that their daughter had been stabbed. Those words replayed in her mind as they rushed to the scene, with 2 of her children in the car, crying and scared about what was happening. She stated that she never imagined the horrific reality they would face. McCullough reflected that the look of pure trauma on their children's faces when they saw their sister being taken away in an ambulance was something they would never forget. They conveyed that the gravity of the situation was beyond anything they could express. They added that they would always remember being prevented from seeing their daughter in that alley or in the ambulance, from seeing her open eyes or hearing her last words, knowing that they weren't able to be by her side. They mentioned that they couldn't even hug or touch her in the hospital, stating that their daughter became a crime scene and that she was evidence. Holly's situation is a clear example of domestic abuse. Although the law may prevent from labeling it as such due to her age, Logan was so obsessed with her that he felt if he couldn't be with her, no one else should be either. There is so much media coverage of how many women are killed each year by men, it almost normalizes it for young men like Logan. Things have got to change. MacPhail admitted manslaughter but was convicted of murder as well as wounding with intent. He said he wanted to return some of Holly's belongings, slippers, clothes, and teddy bears, but when he was arrested, he didn't have any of them with him. MacPhail was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 17 years, plus an additional 5 years in prison for intentionally wounding another young man who tried to stop the attack. MacPhail was told that even after serving the minimum term, he would only be released when it was deemed safe to do so. Speaking after the sentencing, Detective Darren Davies of Northumbria Police said it was a truly devastating case, with Holly's future cruelly taken away by MacPhail. Of course, nothing will ever reverse the tragic events of that evening, Detective Davies said, adding that he hopes the result will bring Holly's loved ones a sense of closure so they can attempt to move forward. So many lives have been changed forever by the decisions he made that night, and now he will have plenty of time to think about that in his cell. Shannon Graves was born on November 4, 1988, in Ohio, USA. She was raised by her mother, a single mother. Everything changed when her mother met Ronnie DePaul, who became a father figure in her life. Ronnie treats her like his own daughter and she quickly takes a liking to him. She was known for her kind heart and loving nature. In 2016, Shannon proudly earned her cosmetology license, marking a new beginning after a challenging childhood. Her friends affectionately called her Star, recognizing her free spirit, honesty, and selflessness. However, Shannon's compassionate nature sometimes led her to make poor choices in relationships. Following her mother's death, she struggled with substance abuse. Her close friends observed that she often fell for the wrong men, whether due to bad luck or her attraction to rebellious personalities. Despite these challenges, Shannon was determined to take control of her life. Her professional achievements filled her with hope for a brighter future. Unfortunately, Shannon's intuition was wrong when she became involved with Arturo Novoa. He is of Puerto Rican descent, charming and passionate about music, but he is also very secretive about his life. This secrecy likely stemmed from his lengthy criminal history, which began in 2004 with arrests for assault and property damage. A few months later, he faced charges of escaping from prison and obstructing public service. In 2006, he was charged with felony fleeing after a police chase, followed by aggravated arson charges. After serving his prison term, he was arrested again for trespassing in 2008 after being evicted from his residence. In 2010, he faced additional charges related to weapons and unlawful entry. Court records indicate that he was a man addicted to criminal activity and made a living by illegal means. When Shannon and Arturo began dating in the summer of 2016, everything seemed to be going well. She introduced him to her family and started spending more time at his home. That same year, she got a puppy, which brought her joy and companionship. During the holiday season, she celebrated with her family, enjoying food, laughter, and gift exchanges. This gathering would unknowingly be the last time the family would be together. 2 months later, while with Arturo, Shannon briefly encountered her sister, Debbie DePaul. They discussed Debbie's upcoming birthday in March, for which Shannon was already making plans. However, when the day came, she did not attend, an unusual absence. Initially, her family thought she was just busy and would arrive later, but she never came. Alarmingly, she did not call or send a message, not even to wish Debbie a happy birthday. When she also missed the Easter gathering the following month, concern grew. As time passed, her family's anxiety increased. After calling and texting several times without receiving a response, Ronnie attempted to contact Arturo. He claimed that he and Shannon had broken up and that she had moved to Cleveland with someone else. However, when Ronnie and Debbie tried to contact her directly, they were unsuccessful. Determined to find her, they went to her apartment, but found no clues. Her car and phone were there, but her beloved dog was missing. Around this time, Arturo was arrested on charges related to banned substances. In the following weeks, Shannon's family was engulfed in fear and uncertainty. In June, Debbie officially reported her as a missing person to the police. In their report, family members acknowledged Shannon's past struggles with addiction but highlighted that she had never gone this long without contacting them. Authorities requested anyone with information to come forward while they searched hospitals and jails, but there was still no trace of Shannon. Investigators found tracking her whereabouts to be extremely challenging, especially since she had been missing for months. They filed a request for her phone records and began looking into her personal life, noting that she often spent long periods of time with her boyfriend, Arturo, before her disappearance. The police subsequently interviewed Arturo. He recounted the same story he had told Ronnie, adding complexity to the case. Without a clear timeline for Shannon's disappearance, they could not confirm Arturo's alibi. Additionally, there was no evidence of a new boyfriend with whom Shannon had supposedly moved in. As suspicions rose, detectives learned about an ex-boyfriend named John, and considering this lead, they decided to investigate him further. John, a business owner, had a criminal past involving trafficking of banned substances. His incarceration had led to his breakup with Shannon, as her friends remembered how distressed she was upon learning of his conviction. Complicating matters, John had been released from prison shortly before Shannon was reported missing. When police found and interviewed him, he claimed he hadn't seen her since February, when she mentioned getting back together with Arturo. His statement implied that her relationship with Arturo may not have been as perfect as it seemed. Still, John admitted that he had lingering feelings for her at the time of their last conversation. With 2 potential suspects but no clear evidence, police were having a hard time getting their case off the ground. When Shannon's phone records were finally released, investigators hoped to glean vital information. Unfortunately, these records only confirmed that she had gone to work as usual in late February before her phone was suddenly turned off. The number had since been reassigned to someone else, and around that same time, all activity on her credit cards also came to a halt. The investigators had no idea that the answer to the case was about to emerge, but in the most frightening way. On July 30th, a man from Youngstown called 911 to report a shocking discovery. He told the operator that he had found human remains inside black garbage bags, and most disturbingly, the head was missing. Upon receiving the signal, rescue workers notified the police, who quickly arrived at the home of the caller, Kenny Eschenbaugh, and his wife, Jill. While forensic experts investigated the remains, Kenny and Jill were brought in for questioning. According to their testimony, the freezer containing the body parts belonged to a friend. A week prior, this friend had asked Kenny and Jill to store it in their basement, claiming it was filled with meat he didn't want to spoil. On July 29th, Jill decided to cook spaghetti and meatballs for dinner and thought she could use some meat from the freezer, planning to replace it later. However, when she approached the freezer, she found it locked. Assuming their friend was just being eccentric, she used a screwdriver to pry it open. To her horror, instead of meat, she found bags filled with what turned out to be human remains. Feeling nauseated, she quickly shut the freezer and called for Kenny. Together, they cautiously opened one of the bags and discovered a human foot. Since Kenny and Jill's stories matched perfectly when questioned separately, they were quickly ruled out as suspects. Investigators then turned their attention to the friend who had left the freezer in their home, named Anthony Gonzalez. Kenny explained that he had met Anthony 4 years earlier through a mutual friend, bonding over their shared interest in music. Although they hung out occasionally, Kenny found Anthony to be unpredictable and sometimes aggressive. Despite being cooperative, the identity of the victim remained a mystery until forensic experts discovered a scorpion tattoo on one of the feet, matching a tattoo belonging to Shannon, a woman who had recently disappeared. While more tests were planned, it increasingly appeared that the remains belonged to her. This left investigators with a concerning question: how and when was Shannon placed in the freezer? Shortly afterward, the lead prosecutor in Ohio held a press conference to discuss this chilling case, which was rapidly becoming one of the most disturbing in recent history. Although the medical examiner couldn't determine the cause of death without the victim's head, Shannon was positively identified through fingerprint analysis. Her family was heartbroken to learn the truth about their beloved daughter, discovering that her fate was far worse than they had ever imagined. Shannon's family and friends gathered in a local park for a candlelight vigil to remember her. Debbie, one of the attendees, told reporters that she believed Shannon has found peace. The vigil was intended to celebrate Shannon's life rather than to focus on sadness. Many people lit candles and released lanterns while wearing shirts with messages honoring Shannon. However, Shannon's family was visibly pained. Ronnie, too devastated to appear on camera, shared his indescribable grief, explaining that he loved Shannon as a daughter and sought justice for her. In the meantime, investigators ramped up the search for Anthony. They soon discovered that Anthony Gonzalez was just an alias. His real name matched the identity of someone they had already suspected, Arturo Novoa. Authorities learned that Arturo had been dating a woman named Katrina Layton, who moved into his house shortly after Shannon was last seen. Given Arturo's lengthy criminal history, the police acted quickly, arresting both him and Katrina and searching their home. The police found red stains on the walls, a knife, and a manual for the freezer where Shannon's remains were located. Kenny, who previously believed his friend's name was Anthony, was shocked to learn Arturo's true identity. He wasn't the only one confused. Arturo often used different names, possibly to conceal his past involving activities related to banned substances. During questioning, Arturo remained composed, repeatedly denying any connection to Shannon's death and claiming ignorance about her whereabouts. He also distanced himself from the freezer. Katrina supported his claims, but their story began to unravel when police discovered a key among her belongings that fit the freezer's lock, linking them to the crime and ensuring they remained in custody. As the investigation continued, Shannon's ex-boyfriend John played a crucial role in uncovering additional information. He spoke to Shannon's friends and learned about a bonfire attended by Arturo. A witness reported that Arturo used the fire to burn personal items and, when questioned, he claimed they were Shannon's clothes, which he burned as revenge for alleged infidelity. That night, he was with his friend Andrew Herman, and they both continued to burn clothing. Investigators later searched the bonfire site and found remnants, including a bracelet that belonged to Shannon. As the investigation progressed, authorities contacted a woman named Jamie, who knew Andrew and his wife, Michelle Eilenfeld. Jamie reveals that Arturo and Katrina were behind Shannon's murder, while Andrew helped handling the body of her body. Jamie stated that Katrina had harbored jealousy towards Shannon for a long time, and that Shannon felt the same way about her. The situation became more complicated when neighbors reported seeing Katrina walking Shannon's dog and using her credit card to make small purchases, suggesting that Katrina had taken over a part of her life. Amid these incidents, Ronnie passed away unexpectedly without witnessing justice. Debbie, overwhelmed with sorrow, sought therapy while caring for her younger brother and Shannon's cherished dog. Meanwhile, Andrew and Michelle were placed in pre-trial detention. Authorities gathered a wealth of evidence that Michelle had threatened witnesses, interfered with the investigation, and covered up the crime. As the case went to the jury, the truth of what happened became clearer. On February 24, 2017, Arturo killed Shannon, likely with Katrina present. He later called Andrew to assist him in handling the body. They disposed of her head, stored other body parts in their freezer, and discarded some remains in an undisclosed location that authorities have yet to find. The prosecutor stated that Arturo was merely a small-time dealer of banned substances, acting out of jealousy over Shannon's finances. Katrina, on the other hand, wanted Shannon to keep her distance so she could pursue a relationship with Arturo. Facing the death penalty, the four defendants ultimately accepted plea deals. Arturo Novoa received a life sentence for murdering Shannon. Katrina Layton was sentenced to 18 years, Andrew Herman to 12 years, and Michelle Eilenfeld to 2 years. Arturo attempted to appeal his sentence, but it was upheld. To keep the memory of Shannon alive, Debbie created a social media page dedicated to her younger sister, where she frequently shares pictures of her pet dog. She frequently visits Shannon's grave, where she has established a special ritual. After cutting the grass, Debbie spray paints a large pink heart next to the headstone, which was Shannon's favorite color. In a local interview a few years later, Debbie recalled the devastating call she received about the partial discovery of Shannon's remains. Currently, the investigators who helped convict Arturo are still searching for the missing parts of Shannon's remains. Debbie remains hopeful that they will be found someday as she continues to honor her sister's memory through her dedicated online tribute.